Imagine stepping softly through a medieval village as the last light of day dips behind thatched rooftops. Lanterns glow gently along cobblestone streets, their flames dancing softly against timbered walls. Smoke rises lazily from clay chimneys, carrying the faint scent of burning herbs and baking bread. Somewhere nearby, a river murmurs quietly over smooth stones, reflecting the golden glow of the setting sun. The air is cool and calm, wrapped in a gentle mist that settles over fields, gardens, and market squares. You can hear the soft clatter of carts returning from fields, wheels creaking gently against uneven stones, and the occasional murmur of voices, low and warm, as villagers make their way home. Even the wind seems careful, whispering through the branches of apple trees and willows, rustling leaves in quiet rhythms that echo across narrow lanes. In these villages, life moved slowly, punctuated not by urgency, but by cycles and rhythms that guided daily existence. Animals stirred in pens, roosters crowed at intervals, and dogs padded softly along pathways, joining the ebb and flow of human activity. The scent of baking bread mingled with dried herbs hanging in windows, and the faint tang of smoke from hearths reminded all that homes were warm, alive, and cared for. People carried baskets of apples, firewood, or grains, their footsteps deliberate and measured. Even the smallest sounds, the clink of a knife against a chopping board, the gentle sweep of a broom across a doorway, were absorbed into the overall cadence of the village, a quiet music that underscored daily life. Tonight, however, the village is preparing not for ordinary work, but for festival. And yet, these festivals were never noisy spectacles in the modern sense. They were moments of gentle ritual, of soft celebration, where tradition and daily life intertwined. People gathered not to compete, nor to boast, but to observe customs that had been passed quietly from one generation to the next. Imagine elders arranging small offerings at doorways, children carrying bundles of fresh flowers, and neighbors sexing quiet greetings as the evening cools. Even the most peculiar practices, the careful placing of coincident fountains, the weaving of soft garlands, or the subtle ringing of small bells, were conducted with a gentle acknowledgement of continuity and care. As lanterns are lit along narrow lanes and in front of humble homes, the village seems to breathe in unison. The golden light spills onto stone steps, illuminating worn thresholds and moss-covered walls. People move deliberately, adjusting lanterns, arranging food offerings, and preparing tiny stages for shadow plays or quiet music. The air carries the mingling scents of herbs, candle wax, and fresh earth, layering together to form a comforting sensory blanket. Even the river nearby seems to recognize the change in pace, its ripples slow, reflecting lantern light and moonlight, turning the water into a softly shimmering mirror of the village. Within this gentle atmosphere, the odd traditions of medieval festivals begin to emerge, not as curiosities to be marveled at in haste, but as small, intimate rituals that offer reassurance, connection, and calm. Some involve placing tiny objects carefully in garden corners or along pathways, gestures meant to bring good luck, ward off misfortune, or honor unseen spirits. Others include quiet processions through town squares, where participants move slowly, carrying herbs, lanterns, or painted banners, their faces calm, their eyes focused on ritual gestures. The sound of footsteps, soft songs, and low laughter drifts across the cobblestones, blending with the natural world in a way that feels measured, intentional, and soothing. Picture children following elders with small lanterns, their eyes wide in fascination but their movements careful. Picture women arranging petals into simple patterns along the edges of fountains, men adjusting the placement of tiny figurines on altars, and neighbors stopping to exchange a few whispered words of encouragement. Even the most whimsical acts, the tying of threads around door handles, the spinning of wheels or tops, the creation of tiny painted eggs, carry an air of mindfulness. They remind everyone that participation is gentle, deliberate, and meaningful in small, tangible ways. There is also a rhythm of preparation and reflection in these customs. Morning may begin with sweeping courtyards and laying out simple decorations, while midday brings quiet observation of rituals and the soft playing of instruments. Afternoon may involve the sharing of small meals, simple refreshments, and the passing of whispered stories. As evening approaches, lanterns are lit, flowers are arranged, and the scent of incense or dried herbs fills the air, carrying a gentle reminder of continuity, memory, and care. Even the smallest gestures, a hand rested lightly on a carved stone, a coin dropped carefully into a well, a flower laid upon a windowsill, imbued with soft intention, creating layers of quiet meaning throughout the village. The beauty of these medieval festival customs lies in their calm inclusivity. Everyone has a place, whether they are young or old, visitor or resident, human or animal. The act of participating, of moving slow through these rituals, fosters attentiveness, patience, and connection. There is no rush, no competition, only a shared acknowledgement of history, community, and the quiet oddities that make life memorable. Thevillage becomes a living mosaic of small, carefully observed traditions, each contributing to the gentle hum of daily and festival life. And so, as twilight deepens and the first stars begin to shine above thatched rooftops, Thevillage seems to settle into a collective sigh. The river reflects glimmers of lantern light, the mist rises soft light from fields and gardens, and the smoke from chimneys curls lazily into the cooling sky. Shadows stretch along cobblestones and walls, intertwining with the faint light of lamps and the soft glow of candles. Somewhere in the distance, the faint chime of a bell signals a pause, a moment to breathe and notice, as villagers tuck small offerings into place or tiptoe carefully along pathways. Tonight, as we walk gently through this village of festivals and quiet oddities, let your thoughts slow in rhythm with each observed tradition. Let the warmth of hearths, the soft fragrance of herbs, the careful arrangement of flowers, and the faint music of soft bells guide your mind into calm. Imagine the gentle hands of villagers, the quiet anticipation of children, and the serene attentiveness of elders, all participating in customs that have persisted for centuries. These are not grand events, but subtle, enduring gestures that invite presence, observation, and reflection. As your eyes grow heavier, let Thevillage, its lantern-lit streets, its whispered traditions, and its gentle oddities guide you towards stillness. Here, in the soft echo of medieval festivals, there is comfort in repetition, joy in simple participation, and peace in the quiet observance of ritual. Inhaling the scents of smoke, herbs, and baked bread, feeling the gentle hush of the evening, and noticing the slow, deliberate movements of villagers, allow yourself to drift into a calm, reflective state. The past becomes a gentle companion, and the peculiar yet peaceful customs of medieval life unfold like a quiet, reassuring story told beneath a starry sky. In this way, we begin our journey into the strange yet serene world of medieval festivals. We will observe odd beliefs, gentle rituals, and small communal practices, not with urgency, judgment, or spectacle, but with quiet curiosity and mindful attention. Every detail, from the soft clinking of coins to the delicate scattering of petals, forms part of a larger rhythm, the rhythm of life observed, celebrated, and honored with calm intention. Tonight, let us move softly into that rhythm, letting the past whisper its stories gently, as lanterns glow, fires crackle, rivers murmur, and the village drifts into peaceful night. As dawn tiptoed across the medieval village, a gentle hush blanketed the cobblestones and thatched roofs. Their sky, soft with the pale pinks and muted oranges of first light, reflected slowly on dew-covered gardens. Each drop caught the new day delicately, glimmering like tiny jewels scattered over herbs and flower beds. In the distance, a church bell tolled just once, a soft chime that drifted over fields and houses alike. Its voice wasn't commanding nor urgent, but calm, measured, and deliberate, reaching over rooftops and into quiet corners where people still slept. Somewhere, a rooster crowed not shrill, but stretching its call in the cool morning air. Even nature seemed to move with caution, as if not to disturb the fragile peace of a village in the earliest moments of a festival day. Along narrow streets, smoke began to rise lazily from chimneys, curling upward in gentle swirls before dissipating into the morning light. The scent of burning wood and herbs mixed with the lingering coolness of night, creating a soft aroma that wrapped around cottages and market stalls alike. From a distance, a river murmured steadily, flowing over smooth stones and reflecting the colors of dawn in delicate ripples. Occasionally, a fish broke the surface, sending concentric circles across the water, fatchemed like molten silver. The air was fresh, carrying hints of earth, baked bread, and herbs drying on windowsills. As villagers began to stir, the rhythm of the morning unfolded with quiet intention. Elders rose first, their steps slow and careful on wooden floors and worn stone paths. They performed simple acts of devotion, crossing thresholds, touching carved symbols above doors, and whispering small blessings over children around. Each gesture was deliberate, passed down through generations, a calm acknowledgement of the world waking around them. Windows opened one by one, letting in a soft draft that carried with it the smell of bread being kneaded and cakes being shaped for the day ahead. Even before the first festival bells rang, the village moved with an unhurried, mindful pace. Children emerged from homes wrapped in woolen shawls or light linen tunics, their eyes heavy but curious. Some wandered to gardens to watch the dew catch sunlight on petals, tracing the veins of leaves or listening to the hum of insects. Others paused near fountains, dropping small coins quickly into the water, tiny gesture of hope or luck. Quietly observed and respected by those nearby, their movements were tentative yet intentional, part of a learning process that connected them to the odd but gentle customs surrounding festival life. The village itself seemed to cradle these moments, allowing each small act its own space and importance. Market stalls began to hum softly with preparation. Merchants laid out cloths and baskets with care, arranging fruit, grains, and handmade items with the precision of someone aware of the beauty and order. Wooden crates were gently stacked, their surfaces worn smooth from years of use. Apples and pears gleamed faintly in the morning sun, plucked carefully from baskets and polished with soft cloths. Herbs were in small bundles, their scent drifting lightly over the square. Even the act of placing a ribbon or small charm upon a stole seemed meditative, a quiet ritual that honored both the day and the people who would pass by. The soft clatter of tools could be heard, though it was never harsh or intrusive. Knives cut herbs, brushes swept dust from wooden surfaces, and hammers tapped gently as small decorations were fixed into place. Each sound blended with the natural backdrop of the village, birds calling to one another, the wind moving through tree branches, and the slow gurgle of the river nearby. Every element contributed to a larger harmony, a careful layering of human and natural rhythms that created a calm, continuous pulse through the village. Even the smallest actions, folding cloth, tying string, arranging petals, were performed slowly, deliberately, and with a sense of mindfulness. Villagers moved with an awareness of history, observing small, odd traditions that had persisted for decades or even centuries. Coins placed in fountains, grains scattered in quiet corners, and tiny charms tucked into doorways were gestures both practical and symbolic. These acts connected the living to their ancestors, to spirits, and to the natural cycles that governed daily life. They were subtle, often unnoticed by casual observers, yet their impact was profound, establishing a sense of continuity and comfort in the world around them. Children were taught to participate gently, absorbing these lessons through observation and imitation, learning that rituals were not only acts of faith but also expressions of care and patience. As Themarin progressed, soft music began to drift through the village. Simple instruments, flutes, handbells, and small drums were played carefully, their notes gentle and deliberate. The sound was not meant to startle or excite, but to create a calming atmosphere, blending seamlessly with the low hum of daily life. Musicians moved slowly among the stalls and gardens, allowing the music to rise and fall like the ebb of a quiet river. The soft melodies intertwined with the laughter of children, the rustle of leaves, and the distant tolling of bells, creating a multi-layered soundscape that was soothing, reflective, and deeply immersive. The villagers' clothing mirrored the softness of their movements. Linen tunics, woolen shawls, and simple leather shoes muted the sounds of footsteps, allowing the natural rhythm of the village to dominate. Colors were gentle, muted reds, soft blues, pale yellows, and earthy browns. Even the bright tones of festival decorations were carefully blended to avoid harsh contrasts, producing a palette that was both visually restful and harmonious. The combination of visual softness, tactile textures, and slow, deliberate movement contributed to an overall sense of calm, as if time itself had slowed to accommodate the gentle unfolding of the morning. Breakfast preparations added another layer of comfort. Hearths were tended with care, fires stoked slowly, and pots filled with porridge, bread dough, or the aroma of freshly baked bread mingled with the lingering scent of herbs and smoke, creating a warm, enveloping environment. Villagers ate quietly, often in small groups, occasionally exchanging soft words, or meals were simple but nourishing, emphasizing community and mindfulness over indulgence or haste. Even the act of washing hands and faces at wooden basins or stone fountains became part of the rhythm, a deliberate preparation for the day ahead, both practical and symbolic. Small acts of play punctuated calm, particularly among children. They chased one another gently through gardens, skipped over puddles in streets, or imitated the elders' rituals with tiny lanterns or bundles of herbs. Their laughter was light, like wind chimes swaying in a soft breeze, never loud enough to disturb, but enough to remind all present of life's quiet joys. These moments were carefully observed by adults, who allowed children space to explore while maintaining the gentle structure of tradition and routine. As the morning stretched toward noon, the festival preparations continued at a measured pace. Decorations were hung along doorways, small offerings placed at latrines, and ceremonial objects adjusted carefully. Even the animals in the village were part of the rhythm. Chickens scratched gently in yards, cats wound quietly among feet, and dogs padded softly behind their owners. Every element of life, no matter how small, contributed to the layered tapestry of calm that defined the village in these early hours. By mid-morning, the village had settled into a quiet anticipation. Visitors who had come to participate or observe festival traditions moved slowly, taking in sights, scents, and sounds with careful attention. Everyone seemed aware of the shared rhythm, of the small odd customs that might otherwise be overlooked. Coins were dropped into fountains with soft splashes, petals were scattered with delicate precision, and tiny charms or threads were tied into place with reverent hands. These acts were small but profound, reinforcing contextual mindfulness and a gentle sense of order in the midst of life's unpredictability. Even as preparations reached their height, nothing felt hurried. Each movement was deliberate, each sound muted, and each interaction steeped in care. The village seemed to exist in a suspended space, where the present moment was all that mattered, and where the past and future were woven quietly into the rituals of the day. This was not a world of grand spectacle or loud celebration. It was a world of subtle gestures, deliberate attention, and a steady, calming rhythm that had endured for generations. As the morning waned and the sun rose higher in the sky, the village remained a place of gentle activity. Smoke continued to rise from chimneys, bells tolled at intervals, and the river reflected shimmering light across its surface. Villagers moved thoughtfully from task to task, weaving together domestic duties, festival preparation, and the small, peculiar customs that gave the day meaning. Each act, no matter how minor, carried weight and intention, contributing to the overall sense of harmony that enveloped the village. By the time the first true festival bells were rung, the village was ready not with haste or expectation, but with a calm, measured readiness. Stalls were set, children were guided into gentle games, elders oversaw small rituals, and neighbors observed one another with quiet attention. The air seemed charged, not with excitement, but with serenity, anticipation, and the shared understanding that these odd yet comforting traditions were as much about mindfulness and community as they were about celebration. And so, as the morning drew fully into day, the village pulsed with life, not in loud proclamations, but in soft, deliberate rhythms. Every sound, smell, and movement was carefully noted by the people who lived here, and even by those who passed. Each small odd tradition, from coins in fountains to whispered blessings, contributed to the enduring tapestry of calm that defined medieval festival mornings. In observing these practices, one could feel the weight of history not as a burden, but as a gentle companion guiding each step. As dawn began to spill soft light over the village, the first hints of floral color emerged in gardens, hedgerows, and along worn paths. Dew clung delicately to petals, weighing them just enough to glimmer in the morning sun. The air carried the faint perfume of jasmine, wild roses, and primroses, mingling with the lingering scent of smoke from hearth fires. Children and elders alike stepped quietly among these blossoms, careful not to crush tender shoots. For today, as in countless mornings before, flowers were more than decoration. They were small, living threads in the fabric of festival tradition. Their colors, textures, and fragrances were observed with patience, a gentle meditation that began long before fingers touched stem or leaf. In workshops and open courtyards, villagers gathered quietly, selecting blooms for crowns. Some used small baskets lined with soft cloth, others worked with hands bare, tracing the curves of petals and the length of stems. Each flower was awesome for its balance of hue, form, and subtle fragrance, and placed with careful thought. Pink roses were paired with soft bluebells, daisies twined with sprigs of fragrant herbs, and delicate vines formed a basis of crowns that would rest lightly upon foreheads. The act of selecting and arranging flowers was slow and intentional, a quiet ritual that allowed participants to move in harmony with the morning's soft rhythms. Children approached the task with both awe and reverence. They watched elders bend over gardens and woven baskets, observing their patient movements of experienced hands. Young fingers hesitated, unsure whether to tuck a petal under a stem or allow a bloom to float atop the crown, and often adults offered gentle guidance. Just let it rest where it wants, they would whisper, encouraging observation rather than perfection. Every mistake became a lesson in patience, balance, and attention. Through these small, careful actions, children learned not only the practical skills of crown making, but also the deeper values embedded in festival customs: mindfulness, respect, and connection to nature. The process of weaving crowns was accompanied by quiet conversation and soft laughter. Villagers shared memories of flowers used in past festivals, recalled stories tied to particular blooms, and spoke of how certain colors were believed to bring luck or ward off misfortune. Lavender, for example, was often added to crowns as a symbol of peace and calm. Rosemary signified remembrance, and small daisies were included for joy and lightheartedness. Each crown was therefore a living story, a delicate blend of personal intention, communal belief, and seasonal awareness. Even the simplest arrangement held layers of meaning, connecting the maker to ancestors and to the cycles of the natural world. As hands moved through stems and petals, fingers occasionally brushed against soft leaves, releasing tiny bursts of fragrance into the air. The scent mingled with the smoke of hearth fires, the fresh aroma of dew-laden grass, and the faint sweetness of ripening fruit from nearby orchards. Together, these scents created a subtle, layered perfume that wrapped the village in calm and concentration. People breathed slowly, moving gently, and allowed the sensory richness of morning to guide the rhythm of their work. In this way, flower crowns became not only ornaments for festival wear, but also instruments of quiet meditation and mindfulness. Crowns were formed one by one, slowly taking shape over woven stems and intertwined vines. Each bloom had its proper place, yet there was room for gentle imperfection. Petal somatis drooped slightly or leaves bent awkwardly, but these were embraced as part of the crown's charm. The imperfection was a reminder of natural life, a subtle acknowledgement that beauty was not rigid and that the odd quirks of nature were to be celebrated rather than corrected. In this way, the crafting of crowns became a lesson in acceptance, patience, and attentiveness, qualities that were carried gently through the day. Once completed, the crowns were worn with quiet pride. Children and adults alike placed them carefully on heads, adjusting for comfort and balance, feeling the light weight of flowers against hair and skin. Some crowns were simple, made of a single kind of bloom. Others were elaborate, with multiple colors, textures, and trailing vines. As wearers walked through the village, the movement of bodies and breeze caused petals to sway gently, releasing further fragrance and creating a living, moving display of natural beauty. Even the quietest motion seemed ceremonious, a soft dance of color and scent mingling with the village's morning sounds. In some households, crowns were made to be offered rather than worn. Small wreaths were left at doorsteps, on windowsills, or tucked into garden corners as offerings for good fortune, protection, or gratitude. These gestures were quiet and contemplative, a way of honoring unseen forces or spirits while participating in the festivalship without taking a central role. The wreath's ephemeral beauty was a gentle reminder of impermanence. Petals would fade, leaves would wither, and crowns would eventually fall apart. Yet their care and intention were preserved in memory and tradition. Children learned this too, understanding that small, delicate acts could carry meaning even without permanence. Villagers also used crowns as markers of community roles and achievements. Elders who had tended gardens for decades might wear a crown of deep violet blooms, symbolizing wisdom and patience. Young apprentices or children learning new skills might be adorned with lighter, playful arrangements, representing curiosity and the hope of growth. In this way, crowns were subtle yet meaningful indicators of connection within the village, reinforcing social bonds in a calm, observing who wore which flowers. Villagers could tell stories without words, transmitting respect and recognition gently and quietly. The preparation of flower crowns was also attuned to the time of day and the position of the sun. Early morning light was ideal for selecting blooms, as petals glistened with dew and color sapped fresh and luminous. Later in the day, shadows and warmth caused petals to soften and leaves to droop, requiring careful handling to avoid bruising. This awareness taught patience, observation, and an understanding the natural world's rhythms. Flower crowns were therefore not only decorative or ritualistic, but also exercise in attentiveness, blending artistry with reverence for life's subtle, temporal qualities. As crowns were completed and worn or offered, soft music often accompanied the activity: a lone flute, a small harp, or a gentle drumidid, a layer of sound that matched the calm rhythm of fingers weaving petals. The music was never loud, or instead, it moved through the village like a slow breeze, complementing the sense, sights, and tactile enjoyment of the morning. Children sometimes hummed along, their notes gentle and playful, while elders tapped quietly on instruments to maintain steady, unhurried tempos. The combination of music, fragrance, and delicate movement created a multi-sensory environment that was soothing, meditative, and immersive. As the morning progressed, the village courtyard filled with a tapestry of colors: soft pinks, gentle whites, pale yellows, muted violets, and tender greens. Crowns perched upon heads or rested in offering baskets, trailing swaying slightly in the light breeze. Each crown was unique, yet together they formed a quiet, living mosaic that celebrated nature, community, and the passage of time. Observers might notice the careful attention given to placement, the deliberate spacing of petals, or the subtle blending of textures, details that spoke of generations of practice, gentle instruction, and the communal patience that defined these festivals. Even as the sun rose higher, the calm persisted. Villagers continued weaving, offering, and wearing crowns. But there was no rush, no competition, only deliberate, mindful attention. Crowns might be rearranged, petals adjusted, or small additions made in response to subtle observations. Leaf moved here, a bloom rotated there. The quiet dedication to care, observation, and aesthetics created a serene rhythm that carried throughout the village, connecting every participant to the same gentle heartbeat of tradition. By midday, flower crowns had taken their place fully in the festival's quiet pageantry. Children wandered slowly, trailing petals behind them, while adults moved deliberately from task to task, offering advice or admiring the creations of others. Some crowns were left at fountains or small shrines, releasing their scent into the warm air. Some were worn into the market square, where sunlight caught every petal and leaf, casting shadows and glimmers across stone and timber. Observers could feel the rhythm of the day, measured not in minutes or hours, but in gestures of care, attention, and mindful interaction. In this way, the gentle art of flower crowns was more than ornamentation. It was a meditation, a lesson in patience, an act of connection, and a celebration of life's subtle beauty. It bridged generations, teaching children respect for nature, attentiveness to process, and reverence for tradition. It connected neighbors, as small offerings shared knowledge, and communal participation strengthened bonds. And it reminded all who participated that even in simple, quiet acts, there was meaning, continuity, and peace. As the day began to move toward its afternoon lull, crowns rested softly on heads or within baskets, petals brushing against skin and woven stems swaying gently in the breeze. The air remained fragrant, soft music lingered, and the village seemed to exhale, content with the steady unfolding of ritual, practice, and quiet beauty. Every crown, every petal, and a very careful gesture contributed to the enduring calm of the festival morning, a reminder that even the oddest, smallest traditions could be profound in their patience, care, and sensory richness. As the sun began to climb higher above the medieval village, its rays fell gently on cobblestone streets, illuminating the worn surfaces with a soft, golden glow. Each stone seemed to hold the memory of countless foot whispers and small gestures performed over generations. Among these quiet acts, one of the most enduring was the placement of coins in corners, cracks, and nooks of the village's subtle ritual rooted in general beliefs about fortune, protection, and goodwill. The coins themselves were unremarkable in size or value, often copper or small silver pieces, yet their significance was carried through intention, patience, and the care with which they were handled. The morning air was cool, carrying faint scents of smoke, dew-soaked earth, and freshly baked bread, and the soft clinking of coins dropping into stone crevices seemed to blend naturally with quiet rhythm of the village. Villagers approached this ritual with calm awareness. For some, dropping a coin or a well was a gesture asking for safe travels, a quiet plea whispered under the breath before continuing a journey. Others left coins by doorways or thresholds, small offerings to ensure prosperity and protection for homes, families, and livestock. Even the smallest act, like slipping a coin into the shadowed corner of a bridge or the base of a garden fence, was performed with mindfulness. These gestures were gentle, private, and often not noticed by anyone not paying careful attention. Yet they accumulated over time into a subtle map of hope and care throughout the village. Children participated with wonder, turning ritual into quiet play. They carried small coins in pouches, pretending to aim for the deepest crack in a cobblestone or the perfect shadow under a fountain. Their hands were tentative, learning precision, and their eyes watched for the sun to catch the metal surface, reflecting a sparkle that seemed magical in its simplicity. Sometimes, a child would giggle softly, seeing a coin slide into a tiny crevice, while another would carefully place a leaf or flower nearby, enhancing theophylline with innocence and curiosity. These games taught children not only dexterity, but also a sense of participation in communal practices that were subtle, enduring, and quietly meaningful. Adults, in contrast, approached the act with deliberation and calm ritual. They might pause before a stone wall, selecting a coin with care, feeling its weight between fingers, and considering its placement. Some murmured short prayers or blessings, invoking safety, abundance, or gratitude for small blessings in their lives. Others performed the act silently, letting intention carry the meaning rather than words. The repetition of these gestures, performed day after day, festival after festival, created continuity, connecting present villagers with generations long past. Over time, these subtle deposits became a tapestry of community care, a quiet network of hopes and intentions left in tangible form across streets, thresholds, wells, and fountains. Coins placed in corners were often left to be discovered by chance, creating moments of quiet surprise and joy. A passerby might notice a small copper glinting, a shadow, and pause, picking it up with gentle curiosity. Such discoveries were rarely spoken aloud. Their significance was understood intuitively, a soft acknowledgement of the layers of history and intention hidden within the village's stone and timber. These small encounters created subtle interactions between past and present, encouraging mindfulness and reflection, even in the simplest of daily movements. The act of leaving coins was also tied to the natural cycles of the village. During festival mornings, coins might be laid near fountains, gardens, or sacred trees, where sunlight filtered through leaves and danced across stone. The placement was timed gently, in harmony with the rising sun or soft shadows of the day, enhancing the ritual's subtle beauty. The glint of metal, catching the first rays of light, created a quiet visual poetry, linking human intention with the natural rhythms of the environment. Even the smallest coin became a vessel for connection, carrying the weight of hopes, wishes, and gentle superstitions into the world. In addition to wells and thresholds, coins were placed in more unusual or hidden spaces, each with its own meaning. Some were tucked into turrets of trees, intended to ensure fertility and growth, both of the land and the community. Others were placed beneath bridges or along narrow alleys, small gestures of goodwill to travelers and passers-by who might later encounter them. Each placement was deliberate, guided by tradition, observation, and careful attention to villagers knew which corners were lucky, which spots had been honored for generations, and which adau's offered the most protective presence. This knowledge was shared softly, in whispers and gentle instruction, rather than written or proclaimed, creating a living oral map of quiet belief that persisted through centuries. The practice of coin placement was often accompanied by other gentle rituals. Some villagers would sprinkle water, scatter herbs, or leave a tiny bloom alongside the coin, enhancing the offering with additional layers of intention and care. These gestures created multi-sensory experiences. The touch of smooth metal, the scent of flowers or herbs, and the visual sparkle in sunlight all reinforced the act's quiet significance. Even as Thorold moved unpredictably around them, participants in this ritual felt anchored by the rhythm of intention and observation, finding calm in the continuity of small, thoughtful gestures. The communal aspect of the practice was subtle but present. Over time, the coins placed by countless villagers formed a tapestry of shared hope, gently connecting generations. Children who once played with coins might later become adults, continuing through practice with their own pouches of metal, observing the traces of their ancestors' quiet actions. Elders could point out well-worn corners or explain which spots were particularly significant, using soft words to teach patience, reverence, and attentiveness. Even those who did not participate directly could benefit indirectly, stepping carefully over cobblestones or pausing at fountains and noticing the gleam of metal, becoming part of the village's quiet rhythm without intentional action. This gentle practice also encouraged observation and awareness of subtle patterns in the village. Citizens learned to watch how sunlight touched corners, how shadows shifted with the time of day, and how the smallest change could alter a coin's presence. The act of noticing a coin in a quiet corner became a moment of reflection, a pause in the day's movement, inviting mindfulness and connection to place. These small moments were part of a larger meditation, linking daily life with cycles of community, nature, and tradition. As festival days unfolded, the placement of coins continued along to other rituals. Children and adults alike moved from corner to corner, placing, adjusting, or observing, sometimes accompanied by soft music from flutes or small drums, blending seamlessly into the ambient sounds of the village. Birds sang in gardens, dogs padded softly along alleyways, and the occasional murmur of conversation punctuated the otherwise steady rhythm of quiet motion. In this way, the simple act of placing a coin became part of a holistic sensory experience, integrating sound, sight, smell, and touch into a calm, meditative rhythm. Even over weeks and months, the coins in quiet corners persisted as markers of time, memory, and continuity. Weather softened metal, foot traffic shifted its position slightly, and moss or lichen sumacs grew nearby, creating subtle changes that reflected the passage of seasons. Villagers observed these shifts with gentle attention, adjusting or replacing coins as needed, without urgency or pressure. This practice reinforced patience, adaptability, and attentiveness, qualities that were central not only to the act itself, but to the larger life of the village. By the end of the morning, as festival preparations moved toward midday, the quiet work of coins had become a tapestry of each corner, well or shadow, held the collective care of generations, a record of hopes, small superstitions, and daily mindfulness. Children had learned through play, adults had practiced patience and deliberate action, and the village itself had been shaped subtly by these quiet, almost invisible gestures. The rhythm of placement, observation, and occasional discovery created a slow, satisfying cadence, reinforcing a sense of belonging, continuity, and calm throughout the day. As the sun reached higher in the sky, the village retained its soft, measured pace. Coins glimmered in corners, wells, and doorways. Children skipped lightly between tasks, occasionally pausing to notice a glint. Elders observed and guided with gentle attention. Even the passerby, uninitiated in ritual, could feel the subtle magic of intention in these quiet gestures. The village breathed as one, a mosaic of small acts, each contributing to a persistent sense of calm, community, and mindful care. This simple, gentle practice exemplified the odd yet enduring customs of medieval festivals. What might seem trivial to the modern eye, small coins left in corners carried profound meaning. It taught patience, observation, attentiveness, and continuity. It fostered connection between generations and between villagers and their environment. And, above all, it created moments of quiet reflection, the midst of a world that often demanded movement, attention, and change. In the soft rhythm of coin placement, the village found its own, enduring heartbeat. As dusk gently settled over the village, the river became a soft mirror to the fading light of day. Mist rose from its surface in slow, curling swirls, carrying the faint scent of damp earth, water lilies, and moss-covered stones. The air was cool and calm, settling comfortably across gardens, cobblestones, and thatched roofs. Birds called quietly from riverside trees, their notes soft and measured, and the gentle rustle of leaves added a subtle rhythm to the evening. In this serene atmosphere, villagers began to gather along the banks, preparing for the slow, reflective procession of lanterns, a custom as old as memory itself. Lanterns were constructed with care, often from paper stretched across thin bamboo frames, or from small glass vessels with candles inside. Some were painted delicately, adorned with simple floral designs or gentle patterns of waves and clouds, while others were left plain, allowing the soft glow of candlelight to shine unobstructed. Each lantern was chosen for balance, brightness, and subtle beauty, reflecting the careful attention of the person who carried it. The act of holding a lantern, lifting it slightly to catch the evening breeze, and watching its light dance upon the rippling water became, in itself, a quiet meditation. Children participated alongside adults, learning slowly and attentively. Their small hands gripped bamboo frames as parents guided them, teaching careful movements to avoid tipping or extinguishing the tiny flames. The process was slow and deliberate, encouraging observation, patience, and a gentle rhythm that mirrored the river's own steady flow. Young voices occasionally whispered a question, a booth lantern's purpose, and elders answered with quiet explanations, describing how the lights were meant to guide spirits, honor ancestors, or simply illuminate the path for those who walked alongside the river. Every question, every answer, was delivered in soft tones, maintaining the calm atmosphere. Villagers moved in unhurried lines along winding paths that followed the river's gentle bends. The lanterns cast warm, flickering reflections on water and stone, doubling the visual effect and creating a tranquil, immersive scene. Occasionally, the soft clinking of coins or small charms hung within the lanterns added a subtle musical layer, blending with distant murmurs of flowing water. Observers walking quietly alongside the procession felt a profound sense of calm, as if each lantern carried not only light, but the collective hopes and intentions of generations. The lantern's glow reflected off rippling water, creating the illusion of floating stars. Some villagers paused occasionally, adjusting the height of their lanterns to enhance the reflection or watching closely as candles flickered in unison. Children's laughter remained soft, restrained by the quiet rhythm of the evening, while elders moved with measured steps, ensuring balance and maintaining the gentle pace of the procession. Every movement was intentional, thoughtful, and harmonized with the serene environment, turning what might seem a simple task into an immersive, sensory experience. Preparation for the procession began hours before sunset. Candles were tested, frames inspected, and paper repaired as needed. Small arrangements of herbs or flowers were occasionally tucked inside lanterns, releasing faint scents that mingled with the crisp evening air. Even these tiny gestures added depth to the ritual, engaging multiple senses: the soft fragrance, the flicker of light, and the subtle weight of the lantern in hand. These elements combined to create an environment of calm focus, in which participants could enter a meditative state long before the first steps along the river began. The procession followed patterns learned from elders and repeated year after year. Some lanterns were carried at the head of Thaleen, larger or more elaborate, symbolizing guidance and care, while smaller lanterns brought up the rear, highlighting the inclusive nature of the ritual. Each participant understood their role intuitively, aware that their movements and the light they bore contributed to the larger composition of the procession. In this way, the lantern walk became a communal meditation, a collective act of mindfulness and shared tranquility. Along the river bank, benches and stone platforms offered quiet pauses. Villagers sometimes stopped to adjust lanterns, rest hands, or observe the reflections on the water's surface. Children learned to watch their own shadows, noticing how candlelight stretched across cobbles and shimmered on the river, and adults often encouraged these observations. The emphasis was on gentle awareness rather than instruction, creating an atmosphere of slow curiosity and quiet engagement with the surrounding world. Every step, pause, and adjustment became part of a deliberate, contemplative rhythm. The lanterns also served to highlight natural details that might otherwise go unnoticed. Gentle ripples in the water, the curve of a willow branch, or the soft hum of insects became focal points in the evening's unfolding calm. Shadows and light intertwined across surfaces, creating subtle patterns that shifted with every movement. Villagers learned to observe and appreciate these details, cultivating a soft, attentive gaze that extended beyond the lantern procession into their daily lives. The ritual fostered not just illumination, but heightened perception, a quiet harmony between human intention and the natural environment. Sometimes, villagers paused at small shrines or ancient stone markers along the river, adjusting lanterns to cast light upon carvings, inscriptions, or offerings left by previous generations. These moments became brief meditative interludes, encouraging reflection on ancestry, continuity, and the passage of time. The small flame-illuminated carvings softly, revealing details that might have been invisible in the dimming daylight. Observers often felt a gentle connection to those who had participated in similar rituals decades or centuries before. A continuity of quiet reverence carried forward by simple gestures of light. The river itself seemed to participate in the ritual. Gentle currents caught reflections, sending flickers of light along its length, and the occasional repleted a subtle, hypnotic motion to the scene. Villagers walked slowly to maintain balance and allow the water's natural rhythm to be mirrored in their steps. Children learned to notice the interaction between light and movement, observing how a small breeze or an uneven stone altered reflections. Each observation deepened their awareness of the natural world and reinforced the calm, deliberate pace that defined the procession. Evening sounds contributed to the serene atmosphere. Soft wind brushed against reeds, the occasional bird called from a high branch, and water lapped gently against riverbanks and pilings. Conversations were hushed, almost reverent, with words spoken in slow, deliberate tones. Occasionally, a flute or small drum accompanied the procession, but the music was muted, moving along with the gentle cadence of lantern light and footfalls. Every element a river, the breeze, the lights, the people blended to create a slow, immersive, and reflective exercise that encouraged mindfulness and calm observation. As the procession neared the river's bend, lanterns were sometimes placed in the water. Small wooden bases allowed the lights to float gently downstream, creating a visual poem of movement, reflection, and impermanence. Children watched in awe as candles drifted away, tracing slow arcs across the surface, and adults reflected on the gentle symbolism that moments of beauty, care, and intention could move beyond one's immediate grasp, touching spaces and times beyond their own. This act of releasing lanterns into the river carried quiet lessons of detachment, mindfulness, and the gentle passing of time. Even when lanterns extinguished naturally or floated out of sight, the calm effect lingered. Villagers often stood for a moment, watching the water's surface return to quiet reflection, noticing shadows, ripples, and the fading scent of herbs or flowers tucked inside frames. Children's eyes followed every subtle movement, learning patience, observation, and appreciation for the slow unfolding of evening. Adults, too, felt a serene satisfaction, knowing that the day's efforts had created beauty. And continuity for themselves and others in the village. After the lantern walk concluded, participants returned slowly to homes and cottages, carrying with them a sense of collective peace. The riverbanks, now quiet, held subtle traces of the evening. A fallen petal, a smudged reflection, the faint scent of wax or herbs. These small remnants became part of the village's memory, a visual and sensory record of calm, intention, and communal mindfulness. Even in ordinary observation, the echoes of lantern light persisted, gently reminding villagers of the beauty and tranquility that simple, deliberate acts could create. The ritual of lanterns along the river exemplified the medieval balance between community, nature, and quiet tradition. What might seem a simple task, carrying a flickering light along water, was in fact a carefully cultivated practice of observation, mindfulness, and gentle reflection. It taught children patience, adults attention, and the entire village a shared rhythm of care and serenity. Every flicker, reflection, and movement reinforced the subtle, enduring connection between people, environment, and generations past, creating a calm heartbeat that pulsed softly through the village. As night fell fully, the river mirrored the starlit sky, and lanterns no longer needed to be carried, yet their memory remained. Villagers spoke softly of the beauty they had seen, carried home the residual warmth of candles, and felt the quiet contentment of a day concluded with intention and care. In this gentle, sensory practice, simple gestures of light illuminated not only the river, but hearts, minds, and the slow, meditative rhythm of community life. The flickering lanterns taught that small, deliberate acts performed with patience and mindfulness could transform ordinary evenings into experiences of lasting calm, reflection, and connection. As the morning sun stretched its first pale light across the village, courtyards began to awaken with a quiet, measured rhythm. The air was still, carrying the soft scent of dew-soaked stone, moss, and the lingering aroma of flowers from early gardens. In these spaces, festival preparations unfolded not with loud fanfare, but with delicate gestures, Among the gentlest of these customs was the scattering of flower petals along paths, stone floors, and garden edges, a subtle ritual that invited mindfulness and a heightened sense of awareness. The petals themselves were chosen with care. The brightest reds, softest pinks, and warmest yellows were plucked gently from bushes or small gardens, their stems removed so that only the delicate blossoms remained. Villagers, both young and old, moved slowly and deliberately as they prepared these displays. Elders guided children through the process, teaching how to scatter petals evenly without crushing them, how to consider the natural lines of courtyards or paths, and how to harmonize color and form without enforcing strict patterns. There was a beauty in imperfection. A slightly uneven line of petals suggested natural growth, and small gaps allowed air and sunlight to weave through. Children learned not only technique, but patience, observation, and a quiet respect for the fleeting life of each blossom. Every action was performed gently, each movement deliberate, forming a subtle choreography that mirrored the rhythm of the village itself. The act of placing petals was more than decoration. It was a meditation in motion. Adults bent slowly over the stone floors, their hands brushing lightly against cobbles and the edges of steps, leaving petals as offerings to the earth and the community. Some elders whispered small blessings over the flowers, while others remained silent, letting intention carry the meaning. These blessings were for health, happiness, or protection, yet spoken softly, almost as if they were part of Theond. The petals became carriers of gentle thought, their presence infusing courtyards with layers of meaning that transcended words. Children especially delighted in tracing the patterns of petals, often imagining vowels on quiet treasure hunts. They would follow curving lines from fountains to doorways, some attempts picking up a stray blossom and placing it carefully back into the pattern. Their small hands learned not only precision, but also reverence for the space around them. Adults observed quietly, sometimes offering other times stepping back to appreciate the natural rhythm emerging from the children's exploration. This interaction between generations added another layer of quiet connection, linking playful curiosity with mindful tradition. The petals themselves carried sensory richness. Some had a gentle fragrance, releasing subtle hints of rose, marigold, or lilac. As villagers moved among them, the air seemed richer, more textured, when scattered blooms were present. Light reflected differently on the soft surfaces of petals than on stone or wood, creating gentle glimmers that invited slow observation. A breeze could lift a few blossoms, sending them drifting slow to new positions, creating ever-changing patterns that reminded observers of impermanence and the of constant change. Courtyards and paths prepared in this way became spaces of calm observation. Visitors entering the village during festival days would often pause at doorways or fountains, noticing the soft petals and stepping carefully to avoid disturbing them. Elders sometimes encouraged this behavior, explaining how gentle steps honored the labor and intention of those who placed the petals. Even simple actions such as adjusting a stray blossom or lightly brushing petals aside before walking were treated with care, reinforcing a sense of mindfulness and quiet attentiveness. Flower petal displays were also linked to time and season. In spring, fresh blossoms were abundant, and petals were soft, fragrant, and vibrant. Summer petals tended to be slightly tougher, with muted tones reflecting the sun's strength. Autumn petals were smaller and often tinged with warm browns and yellows, carrying the hint of impending change. Even in these seasonal variations, the ritual remained consistent, deliberate, unhurried, and attuned to subtle rhythms of nature. Villagers observed how petals shifted with wind, temperature, or foot traffic, learning to adapt with patience, to appreciate the fleeting, and to engage gently with their environment. Sometimes, petals were arranged near small shrines or statues within courtyards. In these locations, blossoms became offerings, signaling respect, remembrance, and hope. The soft color and fragrance heightened the meditative quality of the space, inviting quiet reflection and gentle lips. Villagers might pause for a moment, noticing a particular arrangement or the way sunlight caught a curve of a flower, before continuing on their tasks. These brief interludes of reflection were integral to the ritual, providing space for inward thought, gentle emotion, and quiet gratitude. The process of scattering petals was also social, though in a soft and understated way. Villagers worked together, coordinating their placement with subtle gestures, nods, and quiet conversation. Occasionally, small instructions were offered, a reminder to space petals evenly, to place blossoms where they would be most appreciated, or to leave certain areas untouched. Yet Ivan, these instructions were given with care, ensuring that the calm, reflective atmosphere remained intact. There was no rush, no pressure, only the gentle, shared rhythm of a community engaged in a common delicate. Children often experimented creatively with petals, forming spirals, curves, or arcs that caught sunlight in different ways. Elders observed these experiments with soft smiles, sometimes gently adjusting the lines while letting the children's expressions of imagination remain. These interactions were as much about teaching patience and observation as about decoration. The ritual nurtured a deep sense of connection between the villagers and their environment, between generations, and between the physical and spiritual worlds represented by gardens, courtyards, and festival spaces. Throughout the day, petals would shift slightly under the weight of footsteps or the gentle touch of wind. Villagers observed these changes, understanding that impermanence was part of the ritual's beauty. Some petals were replaced or adjusted to maintain lines, while others were left as they fell, allowing the natural course of events to subtly influence the visual tapestry. In this way, the act of scattering petals became a living, dynamic meditation, blending human intention with natural movement in a continuous flow of quiet observation. Evening brought new layers of calm. As sunlight softened and lanterns were lit, petals took on additional meaning, reflecting candlelight in subtle, glowing hues. Children might follow lines under the gentle light, tracing patterns with slow, deliberate steps. Adults would move among courtyards, observing reflections, adjusting arrangements, or pausing to inhale the fragrance. The transition from day to evening light, the subtle beauty of petals in changing light, reinforcing attentiveness, patience, and quiet appreciation of fleeting moments. In some villages, petals were collected at the end of festival days and scattered out rivers or composted in gardens, completing a gentle cycle of renewal. Others were left to fade naturally, with the understanding that impermanence was part of their charm. This slow, cyclical approach taught villagers to value process over permanence, emphasizing mindfulness, gentle care, and reflection on the passage of time. Every blossom, even when no longer vibrant, contributed to a broader sense of community, continuity, and quiet connection to nature. The act of scattering petals created a shared sensory experience, blending touch, sight, and smell into one cohesive moment of calm reflection. Children learned to notice subtleties, the curve of a petal, the way sunlight changed a flower's hue, the faint scent carried on the breeze. Adults reinforced these observations with guidance and encouragement, creating a soft framework for attentiveness and mindful engagement. Together, these small acts created a meditative environment, transforming ordinary courtyards into spaces of quiet poetry, reflection, and gentle celebration. Even centuries later, traces of these rituals can be imagined in worn stone paths and gardens overgrown with herbs and flowers. The echoes of petals scattered across festival days linger in memory, evoking images of gentle hands, attentive children, and the calm rhythm of a village attuned to the subtle beauty of life. These acts, though simple, reveal the profound effect of small, deliberate gestures on community cohesion, mindfulness, and the perception of daily life. In this way, drifting petals exemplified the quiet beauty of medieval festivals. They required patience, care, and observation. They taught respect for impermanence, attentiveness to natural rhythms, and a gentle awareness of the space's winding. Above all, they created a layer of quiet, visual poetry that connected villagers with one another, with the natural world, and with the continuity of traditions across generations. As dawn stretched its pale light over the village, the quiet hum of life was already present. Smoke drifted from clay chimneys, dew clung to cobblestones, and the faint scent of bread and herbs carried softly through. Among this gentle awakening, the first notes of soft music began to emerge. Small groups of musicians, often children learning under the guidance of elders, practiced in quiet corners of courtyards and gardens. They tuned simple flutes, pipes, or handbells, testing breath, timing, and touch. The melodies were intentionally soft, intended not to dominate space but to blend with the natural rhythms of the village. The rustle of leaves, the distant call of a bird, or the gentle flow of water along stone channels. In preparation for festival days, musicians surround themselves thoughtfully, considering the space, the wind, and the proximity of listeners. Flutes were held delicately, wooden surfaces warmed slightly by hands, while small bronze or iron bells were struck lightly, producing a gentle chime rather than a sharp clang. Practice was slow and deliberate. Every note was measured, every pause intentional. Children learned not only technical skills but also awareness of volume, spacing, and harmony with the surrounding environment. They watched how sound drifted in open squares, how echo softened against timbered walls, and how tones changed when carried across stone steps or through. As the day progressed, these small performances became integrated with the rhythm of festival acts. Musicians walked slowly among villagers, lanterns and flower petals guiding their path. The music floated effortlessly, mingling with the soft chatter of neighbors, the gentle laughter of children, and the muted clatter of preparation for small games and offerings. Villagers moved with the melody, their steps in subtle coordination with the cadence of flutes and bells. No one rushed, no one called for attention. The music was a companion rather than a command, a gentle pulse underlying the festival's life. The instruments themselves were simple, often crafted from local materials. Flutes were carved from reeds or soft woods, hollowed carefully to produce clear, mellow tones. Handbells were made from bronze or iron, sometimes slightly irregular in shape, which lent each a unique voice. Bells were held in soft leather straps or wooden handles, allowing precise control over volume. Even imperfections in the instruments were embraced. They added texture and character, creating a rich tapestry of gentle, human sound. Villagers considered these instruments extensions of their environment, integrating music into daily life rather than separating it from ordinary experience. Music during festivals was also carefully attuned to space. In open courtyards, flutes produced airy, stretching notes that seemed to float above stone floors. In narrower streets or alleyways, handbells chimed lightly, echoing softly against walls. Musicians learned to listen as much as they played, adjusting posture, breath, and timing to soothe acoustics. Children watched attentively, learning that patience and observation were as important as skill. The act of making music became a meditation, a slow dialogue between sound, space, and the human presence within it. In addition to structure and acoustics, timing was essential. Musicians often began their melodies in the quiet hours of morning or early evening when the village itself was still waking or settling down. The early notes drifted through misty streets, weaving around chimneys and doorways, accompanying birdsong and the soft rustle of leaves. In the evening, music mingled with the warm glow of lanterns, casting shadows and reflections across stone floors and river surfaces. The light and sound together created a layered sensory environment that encouraged slow, mindful movement and observation. Children and adults alike participated in this music. Small hands held flutes, learning breath control and fingering, while slightly older villagers managed more complex rhythms of handbells or simple drums. Lessons were quiet, patient, and often spread across days, allowing skills to develop in tandem with the rhythms of life. Elders demonstrated the importance of listening, encouraging students to notice subtle shifts in wind, echo, and the reactions of nearby listeners. Music became a form of gentle guidance, teaching patience, mindfulness, and attunement to both human and natural rhythms. During festival processions, music moved along with the flow of the crowd. Musicians adjusted their pace to match footsteps, ensuring the sound remained integrated with the environment. Flutes played soft melodies that rose and fell with the slope of streets and alleys. Bells chimed at intervals, signaling transitions between spaces or moments within the festival. The combination created a gentle orchestration that encouraged observation, reflection, and calm participation. Villagers, in turn, adjusted their movements in response, creating a harmonious dialogue between sound and action. The melodies themselves were often simple, repeating motifs that allowed listeners to immerse themselves fully without distraction. These patterns mirrored natural cycles, the rise and fall of river currents, the sway of trees in the wind, or the steady cadence of footsteps along stone. Repetition encouraged focus and mindfulness, allowing villagers to enter a state of quiet awareness where the present moment became more vivid. The gentle layering of tones fostered relaxation, bringing participants into a slow, meditative rhythm that complemented other festival rituals such as lantern walks, floral displays, and musicians also incorporated subtle improvisation. They responded to changes in light, wind, or audience movement, modifying timing, volume, or tone to enhance the immersive quality of sound. Children observed these adjustments with fascination, learning that flexibility, attention, and empathy were as important as technical skill. Through improvisation, music became an active conversation between performers, environment, and listeners. Each festival day, each passage through the village, created a unique, ephemeral composition that existed only in that time and place. The role of music extended beyond performance. During pauses in the festival, when villagers rested on benches, when children explored corners, or when offerings were arranged, soft notes provided a soothing backdrop. These moments of gentle sound transformed ordinary waiting into reflective experience. A few flutes in the distance, a pair of handbells echoing softly across cobblestones, or a gentle hum from a group of musicians created layers of calm that enriched attention and appreciation for small details. Music became a companion, unhurried and patient, shaping perception and mood without demanding notice. Music also harmonized with the natural environment. Wind, water, and birds were part of the auditory tapestry, blending seamlessly with the instruments. Musicians paid attention to subtle echoes, the way a flute's tone lingered against stone, or the way a bell's chime was carried down narrow streets. By integrating with nature, music encouraged villagers to perceive sound more attentively, notice subtle differences, and engage gently with their listening became as important as playing, teaching a kind of quiet mindfulness that extended beyond the festival day itself. As day transitioned into evening, lanterns were lit, casting warm light across streets, courtyards, and riverbanks. Music adapted naturally, slowing and softening to match the change in light and mood. Flutes were played more gently, bells chimed with longer pauses, and the collective rhythm slowed. Villagers followed this transition unconsciously, moving with calm steps, adjusting posture, and aligning breathing with the ebbing music. The combination of fading light and gentle sound created an enveloping atmosphere of comfort, reflection, and serenity. Even at the end of the festival, music lingered. Notes carried down empty streets, faded across courtyards, and intertwined with the quiet of night. Children read at home with lessons and melodies still echoing in memory, while adults felt the subtle calm of charade rhythm and intentional, unhurried practice. The village, now quiet, retained traces of the soft music in the air, in hearts, and in memory. Music had not commanded attention or excitement, but gently nurtured awareness, reflection, and communal harmony. Through these soft melodies, villagers experienced a rich layering off sensation, the tactile feel of instruments, the warmth of breath and hands, the gentle reflection of sound off stone, and the interaction with wind and water. Music became a practice of mindfulness, a meditation woven into everyday life and festival celebration. Over time, these traditions instilled in each generation an appreciation for patience, attentiveness, and gentle care, embedding calm, reflection, and awareness as natural rhythms in the festival's soft music demonstrated that even the simplest tones, when produced thoughtfully, patiently, and attentively, could foster deep, lasting calm. It bridged generations, connected people with their environment, and created a shared space of quiet reflection. Notes, melodies, and rhythms served as subtle reminders that beauty could emerge from gentleness, observation, and patience. In every village square, among flutes, pipes, and handbells, the soft music carried the heartbeat of communal serenity, lingering in memory long after the last note had faded. As the morning light gently washed over the village, festival preparations quietly unfolded across cobbled streets and open courtyards. Smoke drifted from chimneys, and the faint aroma of baking bread mixed with the sweet scent of spring flowers. Amid this soft awakening, some villagers prepared masks for the day's festivities. Unlike masks designed to startle or frighten, these were intended to celebrate virtues, tell stories, or honor local legends. Children watched with wide eyes as artisans polished carved wood, painted delicate patterns, and threaded ribbons through soft fabrics, turning simple materials into faces that could evoke wonder, curiosity, or joy. The masks themselves were crafted from a variety of materials, chosen for availability, texture. Wood was carefully carved with small chisels, smoothed to prevent splinters, and painted with natural pigments derived from minerals, flowers, and clay. Some masks depicted animals familiar to the village, such as foxes, owls, or deer, each symbolizing particular qualities: cunning, wisdom, or gentleness. Others portrayed saints, local heroes, or abstract shapes, representing virtues like patience, kindness, or perseverance. Cloth masks were sewn from woven linen or cotton, sometimes embroidered with subtle patterns or adorned with soft feathers. Each mask was unique, reflecting the hands, vision, and care of its maker, and each carried the weight of tradition. Villagers wearing masks moved slowly through the streets, careful to avoid startling children or disturbing delicate decorations. Their steps were deliberate, measured, and attentive, ensuring that the atmosphere remained calm and welcoming. Gestures were small but expressive. A bow, a gentle wave of a hand, a slow tilt of the head. Masks could smile, frown, or display a neutral expression. Yet even the most neutral face seemed imbued with a quiet presence. Observers felt invited into a story unfolding around them, without rush, pressure, or demand for attention. The masks transformed ordinary movement into visual narrative, linking the physical world with imagination, memory, and cultural continuity. Children were particularly captivated by the masked figures. They traced the curves of painted eyes with their gaze, noted the shape of animal ears or human features, and observed how movement could bring the static faces to life. In many cases, children learned the underlying stories through this observation rather than spoken explanation. A fox mask might demonstrate cliffness, a saintly mask patience in the face of small challenges, or a virtuous figure might illustrate acts of kindness. These lessons were subtle, conveyed through rhythm, gesture, and visual detail, rather than speech or written text. By following the movements of masked villagers, children absorbed values, history, and a sense of aesthetic appreciation. Adults, too, found pleasure and meaning in the masked processions. They admired the craftsmanship of the masks, the patience of those who carved or painted them, and the careful choreography of movements that ensured calm and continuity. Masks acted as visual anchors in the festivals otherwise bustling and gyrant, drawing attention to the slow, intentional artistry embedded in each gesture. Some adults reflected on their own childhood encounters with masks, recalling stories, emotions, and gentle guidance that had shaped their understanding of community, virtue, and shared culture. The preparation of masks began days or even weeks before festival day. Families or small artisan groups selected materials, designed faces, and carefully painted or carved every detail. Children were often included in minor tasks, holding brushes, observing dye mixing, or threading small ribbons. These moments were slow, deliberate, and focused, emphasizing patience and attention to detail. Elders supervised without hurry, allowing mistakes to become part of the learning process, and celebrating small successes with quiet encouragement. In this way, mask making became a ritual in itself, a precursor to the festival's immersive visual storytelling. On festival mornings, masked participants coordinated their movement with other rituals. They moved in soft arcs through streets and courtyards, interacting gently with other participants, following predetermined routes that allowed villagers and visitors to witness the subtle choreography. Masks were positioned to complement decorations, floral displays, and soft music, creating a cohesive sensory experience. The combined effect of movement, visual design, and accompanying music or ambient sounds encouraged calm observation and participation. Villagers learned to attune themselves to the pace of masked figures, to notice subtle gestures, and to engage quietly with the unfolding narrative. Masks also carried symbolic connections to the natural and spiritual world. Animal representations reminded villagers of qualities valued in daily life. The fox's cleverness in solving small problems, the owl's quiet vigilance, or the deer's gentle grace. Human figures represented local heroes, saints, or virtuous ancestors, bridging temporal distance and linking present-day observers to generations past. These symbolic associations were never imposed through lecture or written decree, but were absorbed through repeated observation and gentle storytelling embedded in gesture, positioning, and movement. The visual presence of masks, combined with their slow, intentional motion, created a deeply immersive way of learning, and some festivals included additional layers of ritual, such as leaving masks temporarily on doorsteps or low walls as blessings or tokens of respect. Children often participated by placing small flowers or coins near the masks, while adults observed silently, appreciating the continuity of the tradition. Masks might also be displayed near fountains, in courtyards, or along narrow alleys, creating small moments of quiet reflection between active processions. These installations were ephemeral. They lasted hours or days, yet they left lasting impressions on those who noticed them. Each placement was deliberate, designed to encourage slow observation, contemplation, and gentle emotional engagement. The tactile aspect of masks was also meaningful. Participants learned to handle masks carefully, supporting delicate structures with both hands, avoiding harsh contact, and adjusting straps or ribbons with attention. Children were taught to respect the materials, understanding that splintered wood, torn cloth, or chipped paint disrupted the quiet beauty of the practice. Handling masks became a slow, deliberate meditation, teaching awareness of physical touch, control, and the responsibility that comes with caretaking. In this way, masks became a medium through which ethics, patience, and attention to detail were subtly reinforced. Throughout the day, masked participants adjusted to the rhythms of light, shadow, and audience attention. Morning sunlight brought different reflections across painted surface than afternoon or evening light, and masks were subtly tilted or shifted to maximize visibility while maintaining calm movement. Observers learned to notice these adjustments unconsciously, following changes in light, shadow, and position without rush or overt instruction. The interplay of visual observation and subtle performance created a gentle dynamic in which attention, empathy, and mindfulness were quietly cultivated. As the festival progressed, music, floral displays, and masked figures intertwined. The soft notes of pipes or bells echoed against cobblestones and timbered walls, enhancing the narrative of movement and presence. Petals scattered across paths mirrored the colors of masks, while lanterns reflected softly off painted surfaces, producing gentle highlights and shimmering shadows. The combined effect of these elements created an enveloping atmosphere of calm immersion. Villagers walked slowly, allowing eyes and ears to follow multiple layers of sensory input, observing without urgency and absorbing stories, values, and visual beauty. Evening brought additional nuance. Lanterns cast warm, golden light, softening the lines of masks and creating subtle shadows across faces and courtyards. Participants slowed further, their gestures smaller and more deliberate, emphasizing reflection and continuity. Observers, children, and adults alike, moved with a quiet attentiveness, savoring the last moments of the festival's visual narrative. Masks, now resting gently in courtyards or along walls, reflected ambient light and became part of the village's calm, enduring landscape. By nightfall, masked figures were carefully returned to storage, cleaned, or repaired for future use. Wood and cloth were treated with oil or fabric care, paint touched up, and ribbons adjusted. Even this post-festival work was performed slowly, with mindfulness and reverence, recognizing the mask's role in connecting generations and preserving quiet storytelling traditions. Children sometimes assisted with minor tasks, learning the ongoing responsibility to maintain continuity and respect for tradition. The rhythm of work was gentle, mirroring the caretaker during performance and creation. The ritual of masked figures left lasting impressions in both memory and space. Villagers and visitors retained images of soft movements, colorful faces, and subtle gestures, carrying them as quiet stories to be recalled during ordinary days. Masks reinforced observation, patience, and reflection. They encouraged gentle curiosity, emotional attunement, and shared understanding. Above all, they created continuity across generations. The same gestures, forms, and materials passed from elders to children, and from one festival to the next, forming a lineage of calm cultural experience. Through these masked figures, the villager cultivated an environment of slow attentiveness. Observation, interaction, and participation were guided by subtlety and mindfulness. The masks encouraged empathy, respect, and awareness of movement, gesture, and presence. They reminded participants and observers alike that festivals were not merely occasions of noise or spectacle, but moments to practice calm, reflection, and gentle communal engagement. Each mask carried his story, artistry, and intention, becoming a small, silent teacher of patience, attentiveness, and continuity. As the first pale light of morning crept over the village, soft mist clung to rooftops and cobblestones. Smoke drifted lazily from chimneys, carrying faint scents of bread and herbs, and dew glimmered on wooden fences and garden leaves. Villagers awoke slowly, their steps measured, their voices hushed, and preparations for festival day quietly began. Among these gentle rituals, one of the most understated yet pervasive involved small bundles of herbs. Families carefully gathered thyme, lavender, sage, rosemary, and other fragrant plants, often from personal gardens or nearby fields. Each herb was chosen for its scent, symbolic meaning, and historical use in the community. Children learned the names of plants through observation and repetition. They traced the texture of thyme leaves between their fingers, inhaled the sweet floral notes of lavender, and rubbed sage gently towards its earthy aroma. Elders guided the process, teaching the subtle differences in scent, texture, and color. Through this slow, deliberate learning, children absorbed not only practical knowledge of herbs, but also the cultural and historical significance embedded in these festival practices. Every leaf, stem, and flower was a connection to past seasons, a bridge linking generations through small, patient acts of care. Bundles were prepared with gentle attention, stems were trimmed evenly, tied with soft twine, and sometimes decorated with small ribbons or dried flowers. The arrangement of herbs within each bundle was deliberate. Fragrant lavender might sit alongside sprigs of rosemary, thyme tucked in for balance, each choice reinforcing sensory harmony. Preparing bundles was often a shared activity. Families gathered on doorsteps or in small courtyards, talking in low tones about last year's festival, the changing seasons, or the growth of each plant. Even these conversations were slow and careful, reflecting the meditative nature of the work. Once prepared, the processions began. Villagers moved slowly through streets and alleys, carrying bundles in hands, on shoulders, or tucked underarms. The movement was unhurried, each step measured to allow both sight and scent to be appreciated. Children followed elders, learning how to hold the bundles gently and move with grace. Adults observed, adjusted pace, and occasionally paused to inhale deeply or reposition herbs, ensuring the scent reached passers-by evenly and that each bundle remained intact. The act of walking with herbs became a meditation, a slow sensory journey through familiar spaces. The smell of herbs became an invisible thread connecting the village. Thyme, sharp yet comforting, mingled with the sweetness of lavender and the earthy calm of sage. Each inhalation reminded villagers of daily life, previous harvests, and long-ago festivals. The scents were layered with other subtle aromas, the warmth of bread from bakery ovens, smoke from fires, dew on grass, and the occasional flower growing beside a wall. These combined to create an enveloping sensory environment, where the gentler rhythm of walking, breathing, and observing intertwined seamlessly. Bundles were also placed purposefully during the procession. Some were laid on windowsills, encouraging scents to drift indoors and mingle with household life. Others were waved gently in the air, spreading aroma down narrow streets or across open courtyards. Occasionally, a bundle rested briefly near a small shrine, left as an offering or token of respect. Each placement was deliberate and quiet, encouraging reflection rather than spectacle. Children watched attentively, noting which locations received bundles and which were left untouched, slowly learning the customs that had guided villagers for generations. This tradition was never rushed. The processions moved with patience, allowing villagers to experience each sensory moment fully. Children discovered subtle variations in fragrance, noticing when sunlight warmed a bundle and intensified the aroma, or when morning dew softened scents along shaded streets. Adults observed patterns of light and shadow, ensuring that the procession complemented the rhythm of walking, combined with careful placement and attentive observation, created an immersive, meditative experience. Each participant felt connected to the past, the present, and the living community around them. Herbs themselves carried meaning beyond their fragrance. Lavender represented calm and protection, thyme for courage and resilience, sage for purification and clarity. Even those who no longer remembered the precise symbolism appreciated the calming effect of aroma and the slow ritual of movement. Knowledge of plant properties passed orally from elder to child, through repeated practice rather than formal instruction. In this way, the procession preserved both practical and cultural memory, ensuring that the wisdom of centuries endured gently, without urgency or pressure. The procession also fostered quiet social bonds. Villagers greeted one another with nods, soft smiles, or brief hand gestures. Conversations were muted and paced to avoid disturbing the rhythm of movement. Children learned the subtle etiquette of approaching and walking alongside elders or peers, observing body language, eye contact, and gestures of respect. Music or soft chimes might accompany the procession, blending naturally with the scent of herbs and the gentle murmur of human presence. Together, these elements created a multi-sensory experience designed to cultivate mindful speech and gentle attentiveness. Even the landscape played a role in the procession. Bundles of herbs moved along cobblestone streets that absorbed the scent, under archways that carried notes of lavender and thyme, across bridges where wind dispersed fragrance over water. Trees, gardens, and small fountains reflected sunlight and enhanced aroma, adding depth to the experience. Villagers learned to move in harmony with the environment, adjusting pace and spacing so that each step complemented natural features. The procession was asmak, an interaction with landscape, as it was a community ritual, emphasizing harmony between human activity and nature. During the course of the festival, bundles were occasionally exchanged between families or one child might gently hand their lavender sprig to an elder, while an adult adjusted a rosemary branch on another's bundle. These exchanges were subtle, reinforcing communal connection and shared participation. Each gesture communicated thoughtfulness, patience, and quiet consideration. The ritual, therefore, was not only about scent or display, but also about teaching and practicing social grace, empathy, and as the day progressed, scents mingled and deepened. Herbs warmed in sunlight released stronger aroma, blending with the smells of food, fire, and flowers. Villagers slowed further, savoring these scents. Children became more aware of subtle differences between bundles, noting which herbs had aged longer, which were freshly picked, and which carried morning dew. Adults reflected on past processions, the continuity of ritual, and the gentle presence of each generation walking in the same paths. This layering of memory, scent, and movement created a shared rhythm that felt timeless. Evening brought additional calm. Lanterns were lit along streets and riverbanks, casting soft light on bundles of herbs. Shadows lengthened, colors deepened, and aromas mellowed. Processions moved with deliberate slowness, ensuring each participant could engage fully with sight, smell, and touch. Children inhaled deeply, letting fragrance linger, while adults noted the interplay of light, scent, and space. By evening, the procession became not only a visual and olfactory experience, but a meditative passage, a slow journey through both environment and memory. When the procession concluded, bundles were often placed carefully in windowsills, small shrines, or communal areas. Some were dried to preserve scent for later seasons, others left to fade naturally in sunlight or dew. Children assisted with placement and care, observing how elders handled bundles with tenderness and deliberation. These final acts emphasized the slow continuity of ritual, reinforcing that the festival was not only a day of movement, but also a sustained interaction with the environment, community, and tradition. In this way, processions of herbs connected the village across time, generations, and senses. Each bundle, each step, and each breath of fragrance carried stories, practices, and gentle lessons. The ritual encouraged mindfulness, reflection, and shared experience without agency or spectacle. Over years, these quiet practices became deeply embedded in community life, leaving a legacy of calm, attentiveness, and sensory awareness that persisted far beyond the festival day itself. As morning light filtered softly through wooden shutters, villagers stirred gently in their homes. Smoke from small hearths drifted upward, carrying the faint smell of bread baking slowly in clay ovens. Outside, dew glimmered on cobblestones, and small birds hopped along fences and garden edges, their quiet chirping punctuating the calm of early day. Among the many understated practices woven into medieval festivals, one of the gentlest and most enduring involved decorating eggs. This was not a rush or noisy activity, but a slow, meditative process that encouraged patience, attentiveness, and quiet curiosity. Eggs were collected from backyard coops or carefully purchased at market stalls. Each was handled with tenderness, the smooth shell cradled in small palms or gentle hands. Villagers prepared natural dyes for coloring, onion skins boiled to create rich amber hues, beetroot for pale, muted reds, charcoals for soft grays, and other plants or herbs to produce delicate variations in tone. These dyes were simmered slowly, allowing colors to deepen naturally without haste. As families gathered around tables, children observed adults carefully lowering eggs into pots of warm liquid, then lifting them out with small tongs or spoons. Each movement was deliberate, measured, and slow, emphasizing mindfulness and attentiveness over speed or competition. The tactile quality of eggs encouraged gentle engagement. Children rolled them softly between fingers to feel smoothness, watched as the surface absorbed color, and noted how shades deepened or lightened depending on time spent in the dye. Adults demonstrate subtle techniques, rubbing patterns with wax or cloth, layering hues, or marking faint lines with small brushes. Conversations during this work were quiet, soft-spoken, and often interrupted by reflective pauses. The group attuned to the textures, smells, and colors emerging before them. Even the clinking of utensils against bowls was moderated, creating a calm rhythm that reinforced the serene atmosphere. Patterns. Some villagers applied simple lines or dots, repeating shapes with careful precision, while others explored more organic designs, inspired by flowers, leaves, or flowing water. Children learned through observation and gentle imitation, absorbing both the technical skill and the patient mindset necessary for the practice. The act of decorating eggs became more than aesthetic. It was an exercise in calm focus, reflection, and the quiet satisfaction of seeing small efforts transform into delicate beauty. Eggs were not only decorated for display, but also for subtle ritual purposes. Some were placed on altars or windowsills as offerings to local saints or spirits, marking seasonal transitions or honoring household ancestors. Others were gently exchanged between neighbors or relatives, emphasizing connection, gratitude, and care. Children often participated in small games with decorated eggs, rolling or passing them slowly along designated paths, always under supervision to maintain gentle handling. These games encouraged playful observation and dexterity, but never hurried compassion or loud noise. The eggs' colors and forms became a shared medium through which families and neighbors expressed thoughtfulness, mindfulness, and continuity. Throughout the day, the process of decorating and displaying eggs blended seamlessly with other festival practices. Aromas of baking, the faint scent of boiled ladis, and the gentle rustle of paper or cloth used to wrap or protect eggs created an immersive sensorium. Light reflected softly off polished shells, enhancing subtle gradients and patterns. Children wandered slowly among tables, examining each decorated egg with curiosity, sometimes pointing to faint lines, others noticing how colors shifted in different light. Adults observed quietly, offering occasional guidance, affirmation, or small hints, always emphasizing patience and careful attention over critique or urgency. The significance of eggs extended beyond individual households. In communal areas such as courtyards, gardens, orchard steps, clusters of decorated eggs were displayed with quiet ceremony. Each grouping was arranged thoughtfully. Larger, darker eggs might anchor the display, smaller, lighter ones filling spaces with visual. Children learned to approach these communal displays with respect, moving slowly, crouching gently to view eggs at eye level, and whispering to one another rather than speaking loudly. The arrangement of eggs was itself a subtle lesson in rhythm, balance, and observation. In addition to color and pattern, eggs symbolized broader cycles of life. Villagers understood that eggs represented renewal, growth, and the continuity of seasons. Decorating them was therefore a practice in attentiveness, not only to artistic detail, but also to families reflected on past festivals, noting changes in materials, patterns, or techniques over their children absorbed this subtle history, linking personal experience with communal memory. Each egg, carefully dyed and decorated, became a quiet record of continuity and the gentle passage of time. Preparation and preservation were also integral. Once eggs were decorated, they were allowed to dry slowly, placed on soft cloth, or nestled in straw to prevent rolling or cracking. Children learned to handle these delicate treasures with care, understanding that even small mistakes could disrupt the harmony of their work. Adults supervised quietly, ensuring both safety and mindfulness. The drying process itself provided a further period of calm reflection. Families could step back, observe their creations, and discuss subtle differences in tone, pattern, or shape. Without evenings brought additional attention to the decorated eggs. Lantern light illuminated colors differently than daylight, creating soft, golden reflections across polished surfaces. Shadows played gently over patterns, shifting with candlelight or oil lamps. Villagers noticed these effects, sometimes rearranging eggs to maximize a visual harmony, or placing them in quiet corners where light highlighted their gentle beauty. Children lingered to observe these subtle transformations, learning that perception depended on context, light, and attention. The ritual of noticing became as important as the act of creating. Eggs were often used to reinforce social bonds. Simple exchanges of decorated eggs between households encouraged subtle acts of thoughtfulness, care. Children delivered eggs to neighbors' windowsills, carefully balancing weight and orientation to prevent damage. Adults supervised and occasionally assisted, demonstrating how even small gestures required attention. Through these exchanges, the practice became a form of communal meditation. Small, deliberate actions that reinforced connections and awareness. Each recipient could appreciate the time, skill, and care invested, creating a quiet, shared understanding. Throughout the festival day, the sensory experience of eggs intertwined with other rituals. The faint aroma of boiled plant dyes lingered alongside baked goods, flowers, and herbs. The visual richness of decorated eggs complemented lantern-lit streets and subtle floral patterns laid along pathways. The texture of smooth shells under fingers encouraged slow observation and gentle touch. Integratical visual and olfactory perception. Children learned to walk carefully, breathe deeply, and observe attentively, absorbing both the immediate sensory environment and the layered meaning of tradition. Older villagers reflected on the continuity of egg decorating across generations. Some recalled learning techniques from parents or grandparents, adjusting their own methods slightly while preserving core practices. Children observed these variations, noting subtle differences in color, intensity, pattern complexity, or choice of dye. This intergenerational transmission created a living history, passed through quiet observation, gentle imitation, and patient practice. Each egg carried the memory of past hands, subtly connecting past, present, and future in a tangible, delicate form. As dusk approached, decorated eggs were carefully stored, displayed in alcoves, or placed near small shrines. Families took time to admire their collective work, noting how individual cantronchet blended into a harmonious whole. Children lingered, observing how colors shifted under fading light, and adults quietly praised care, attention, and patience. The festival gradually settled into evening calm, with eggs remaining as quiet markers of mindful labor, aesthetic appreciation, and gentle tradition. By nightfall, the village grew still. Lanterns cast soft pools of light on cobblestones, and the last steps of festival participants were measured and deliberate. Decorated eggs, now resting in alcoves, windowsills, or on straw mats, reflected the soft glow of lanterns and moonlight. Their presence marked the passage of the day, symbolized continuity, and preserved the quiet lessons of attention, patience, and communal care. Children went to bed carrying images of colors, patterns, and gentle exchanges in their minds, internalizing the calm rhythm of festival life. Over time, these rituals reinforced mindfulness, attentiveness, and the appreciation of subtle beauty. Eggs served as tactile anchors for memory, reflection, and intergenerational connection. The quiet practice of decorating, exchanging, and displaying eggs created an environment in which villagers moved gently, observed carefully, and shared communal moments without urgency. It was a ritual of calm participation, subtly teaching values through sensory engagement, careful observation, and deliberate action. Even years later, villagers could recall the shapes, colors, and scents of festival eggs, along with the soft sounds of careful hands, hushed conversation, and lantern-lit streets. The memory of these quiet acts reinforced a sense of continuity, stability, and shared cultural rhythm. Each egg, whether simple or elaborately decorated, embodied the principles of patience, attentiveness, and gentle curiosity. Through such practice, medieval villagers learned that even small, quiet gestures could carry meaning, foster connection, and cultivate inner calm. In this way, painted eggs became more they were instruments of meditation, vehicles of history, and subtle expressions of community care. They embodied slow learning, sensory engagement, and mindful observation. Each egg, placed or exchanged with deliberation, contributed to a rhythm of life that valued patience. And shared cultural memory. The ritual endured across generations because it was not forced or flashy but gentle, deliberate, and quietly persistent, a practice that nurtured attentiveness and mindfulness in the hearts of villagers young and old. As the day's gentle light softened into evening, a quiet stillness settled over the village. Smoke from hearths mingled with the lingering scents of herbs and baked bread, carrying a subtle warmth through cobbled streets. Children paused in their play, observing the slow transition of shadows across walls and rooftops. Elders moved deliberately, preparing spaces for candlelit offerings that would become the evening's subtle, meditative focus. Lanterns flickered softly in windows, but the small, individually placed candles offered a closer, more intimate form of illumination. Their glow was not meant to dazzle, but to encourage reflection, calm, and quiet participation in age-old traditions. Villagers selected candles with care, often choosing wax of pale ivory, amber, or gently tinted shades created with herbs or plant extracts. Some were hand-rolled from beeswax, carrying a soft honeyed scent that blended seamlessly with incense or the faint aroma of nearby flowers. Others were small tapers, purchased from local craftsmen, their delicate points polished to a smooth finish. Preparing the candles required gentle attention, trimming wicks evenly, ensuring that bases were stable, and occasionally anchoring them in small clay or metal holders. Children observed these preparations closely, learning through watching movements of adults, absorbing not only technique, but also the quiet patience and care inherent in the practice. Once prepared, candles were carried carefully to their designated locations. Some were placed in smaller coves within homes, recessed windowsills, or tucked into garden nooks. Others adorned communal spaces, a line along a path through the village square, a cluster around a tiny shrine, or scattered gently across low walls to catch the soft reflection of moonlight. Villagers moved slowly, adjusting positions so that light fell evenly across surfaces, and occasionally tilting holders to ensure stability. The deliberate nature of placement encouraged mindfulness and attentiveness, transforming a simple action into a quiet meditation shared by the community. The glow of candlelight interacted gently with the environment. Shadows stretched and softened against walls, flickering in subtle patterns that mirrored the natural movement of leaves in evening breezes. Stone surface glowed warmly, and reflections appeared in small pools of water or polished wood. Children watched the shifting light with fascination, noticing how each flame seemed alive, breathing softly with every subtle draft. Adults guided them patiently, suggesting adjustments and pointing out nuances in shadow, reflection, and illumination. Over time, these small lessons in observation and attention became a natural part of village life, subtly teaching both aesthetic appreciation and careful mindfulness. Candles were often used as offerings, each placement carrying meaning that was personal, familial, or communal. Some were dedicated to ancestors, illuminating spaces where family memories resided. Others were left as signs of hope, protection, or gratitude for the passing season. A simple taper could mark a personal intention, while clusters signaled shared community care and recognition. Children learned that the act of placing a candle involved both consideration and intention. One moved the flame with quiet respect, aware of its fragility, the scent, and the warmth it brought. Even the smallest, simplest candle could carry significance, linking physical presence with internal reflection. The sensory qualities of candlelight contributed to the ritual's immersive calm. The wax released a faint, comforting aroma as it warmed, blending with residual scents from flowers, herbs, or incense nearby. Shadows danced across wall sandstones, creating a gentle visual rhythm that encouraged slow walking and quiet observation. Sounds of the village softened, footsteps became measured, voices hushed, and the rustle of cloth or leaves carried new attention. The atmosphere of the evening, shaped by light, scent, and movement, provided a shared meditative experience, subtly bonding participants across generations. During the placement of candles, small gestures reinforced community awareness. Villagers would adjust a neighbor's holder gently if unsteady, tilt a tapers lightly to catch more light, or offer a quiet word of encouragement. Children absorbed these lessons intuitively, noting the care with which elders approached each movement. Even minor actions, tilting a candle, lighting or quick, observing the interplay of light and shadow, became opportunities to cultivate attentiveness, patience, and empathy. These shared, unspoken rituals strengthened social cohesion and encouraged quiet observation and participation. Candles were sometimes arranged in subtle patterns, adding an additional layer of sensory interest. Rows might trace the outline of a doorway or window. Small clusters positioned near low altars, or single tappers spaced evenly along a pathway. Children watched how arrangements created balance and harmony, while adults adjusted placements with careful hands. The process of arranging, observing, and adjusting encouraged reflection on proportion, symmetry, and the effect of light on space. Each evening, the village became a living canvas where flickering flames interacted with walls, pathways, plants, and people to create a serene, contemplative environment. Lighting the candles was itself a deliberate act. Matches or flints were used slowly, the flame drawn carefully from one taper to the next. Elders demonstrated the technique of guiding the wick toward a flame, observing how fire caught gently, avoiding sudden gusts that could extinguish it. Children followed with supervision, learning how to steady hands, breathe calmly, and move in synchronization with Beth environment and rhythm. Lighting became more than a practical action. It was an introduction to patience, attentiveness, and ritual presence. Each newly lit candle contributed to a growing sense of communal calm. As dusk deepened, the village settled further into the soft rhythm created by candlelight. The flickering flames illuminated gentle faces, polished stones, wooden doors, and narrow streets. Shadows lengthened and shifted slow, merging with the muted colors of fading daylight. In this environment, every sound, footstep, bird call, distant laughter was absorbed into the quiet backdrop of light and scent. Children learned to walk slowly, breathing deeply, and observing attentively, while adults moved with measured grace, guiding the rhythm of activity without haste or interruption. The placement and lighting of candles also carried a subtle history. Villages reflected on practices passed down over decades, sometimes centuries, tracing the general evolution of placement techniques, wax composition, and decorative styles. Elders might recall candles positioned along windows during festivals, long past. Children fascinated by tales of how light had guided travelers, marked seasonal change, or honored unseen presences. Through observation and participation, younger generations absorbed this history in the most natural and calming of ways, not through formal teaching, but through quiet, patient practice. Candles often complemented other festival elements. Their glow mingled with reflection of river water, lantern-lit streets, scattered petals, or herbs placed along pathways. Sounds of soft music, flutes, chimes, and handbells blended harmoniously with light and scent. The interplay of sensory experiences created a gentle tapestry, allowing villagers to absorb the festival in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Children noted subtleties in how light reflected off polished surfaces, while adults marveled at the harmony of multiple elements working together without urgency or showiness. As the night deepened, candlelight encouraged reflection and quiet mindfulness. Villagers paused to observe the movement of shadows, the slow burn of wax, and the delicate fragrance of heated candle cores. The act of watching, breathing, and gently walking among candles became a form of meditative practice, encouraging calmness, attentiveness, and gentle interest. Families lingered, observing, adjusting, and quietly conversing, sharing the stillness without loud interruption. The ritual reinforced awareness of presence, time, and the gentle rhythm of community life. Even when candles burned down to stubs or melted wax pooled around holders, the act remained meaningful. Children learned to respect the impermanence of light, understanding that beauty and warmth are transient. Adults reflected on cycles of preparation, illumination, and quiet fading, appreciating the continuity of ritual despite the fleeting nature of each flame. Every taper was a reminder of temporality, patience, and mindful presence, echoing the soft lessons embedded in festival practice. By the time villagers retreated indoors, the village retained an aura of calm. Candles continued to burn in small alcoves, glowing faintly through window sand, casting gentle patterns on walls and streets. Children carried mental images of flickering light, waxy scent, and quiet rhythm into their sleep, internalizing lessons of care, patience, and attentiveness. Adults lingered briefly to observe lingering flames, ensuring each candle remained upright and safe, before quietly closing doors and returning to hearths, reflecting on the meditative practice shared throughout the community. In these small acts, preparing, placing, lighting, observing candlelit offerings embodied continuity, mindfulness, and communal care. They encouraged attentiveness to small gestures, observation of natural and human mediboti, and reflection on time's gentle passage. Across generations, the practice remained a subtle thread in the fabric of village life, teaching children to move deliberately, sense deeply, and participate calmly in. Through centuries, candlelight rituals survived because they were quiet, accessible, and profoundly They required no spectacle or urgency, only care, observation, and gentle movement. The soft glow of a flame illuminated both space and mind, encouraging reflection on presence, connection, and continuity. In every village, each taper, alcove, or garden nook became a point of calm meditation, a tangible expression of culture, and a moment of mindful pause in an otherwise bustling world. By night's end, every candle burned with a small, steady flame, casting soft light across walls, streets, and courtyards. The village lay in quiet observation, enveloped in warmth, scent, and gentle illumination. Children slept with images of glowing points in mind. Adults reflected on continuity and care, and the ritual reinforced the subtle, enduring rhythms of medieval life. Candlelit offerings reminded all participants that even the simplest gestures, placing a small flame, observing its glow, could carry significance, encourage reflection, and cultivate calm attentiveness across generations. As the first light of morning filtered through timbered windows, the village stirred with a gentle hush. Smoke from hearths rose lazily, blending with the fresh scent of dew on grass and the faint aroma of bread baking in clay ovens. Birds chirped softly from roof eaves and garden hedges, punctuating the quiet rhythm of early day. On festival mornings, one of the gentlest, most enduring traditions involved thread soft strands of wool, linen, or hemp woven, braided, or tied as quiet gestures of connection and protection. Unlike the louder celebrations of music or dance, this practice was intimate, meditative, and deliberate, encouraging slow movement, focused attention, and careful observation. Villagers selected threads with care, sometimes dyeing them with natural plant colors, allowing pale greens, gentle blues, muted reds, and soft yellows to emerge in warm sunlight. Children often joined in these preparations, observing elders carefully knotting strands, twisting them into simple braids, or combining multiple colors to form subtle patterns. The tactile quality of threads smooth against fingers, pliable and responsive, offered a quiet, immersive experience, requiring concentration, patience, and gentle touch. Each motion, however small, carried significance, linking the physical act of weaving with attention to tradition, mindfulness, and community connection. Workspaces were arranged thoughtfully. Long wooden tables in homes or communal courtyards offered surfaces for spreading threads. Scissors, animal weights, soft light filtered through windows or open doorways, illuminating colors and patterns without harsh contrast. Children learned to sit attentively, holding strands lightly, following the deliberate motions demonstrated by adults. Fingers moved slowly, knotting and looping, twisting and aligning, while eyes follow its gentle unfolding of patterns. Each braid or weave became a lesson in rhythm, coordination, and focused care. Mistakes were handled patiently, strands untangled carefully, knots adjusted, and children were encouraged to try again without judgment or haste. The threads themselves were not merely decorative. Many were intended as symbols, markers of protection, good fortune, or blessing. Some were tied around doorways, welcoming neighbors and visitors with subtle intention. Others were wrapped around small household objects, such as bowls or bundles of herbs, creating tactile reminders of mindfulness, care, and continuity. In communal areas, threads were often braided into garlands or long chains, draped across fences, gates, or garden arches. Children watched in fascination as individual contributions were integrated into larger patterns, appreciating both their personal effort and its connection to a broader communal expression. Families often collaborated across generations. Elders guided young hands through intricate twists, explaining patterns and meanings softly, while parents demonstrated gentle techniques for aligning strands evenly or blending colors harmoniously. The work required focus, patience, and a calm pace. Even in moments of quiet conversation, the tactile, rhythmic motion of fingers moving through threads maintained meditative attention. Threads became bridges between child and elder, neighbor and household, past and present, linking experience, memory, and intent in a tangible physical form. In addition to knots and braids, villagers sometimes added small embellishments to threads: tiny beads, carved wooden charms, or subtle floral accents. These additions were handled with care, selected thoughtfully, and integrated into the work slowly, creating a layered effect of texture, color, and symbolism. Children learned to thread beads delicately, observing how each movement influenced overall pattern and balance. Adults found satisfaction in the subtle craftsmanship, appreciating the harmony of form and function, beauty and intention. The process encouraged careful observation, gentle repetition, and mindful participation. The act of weaving or braiding threads also encouraged awareness of natural rhythms. Threads might be dyed using plant extracts collected from gardens or fields, soaking slowly in warm water to draw out gentle hues. Families observed subtle changes in color as natural dyes developed, adjusting immersion time to achieve desired shades. The warmth of sun on wooden surfaces, the coolness of morning air, and the faint scent of boiled plants became part of the sensory experience. Each step from preparing materials to final placement immersed participants in a slow, deliberate awareness of environment and process. Threads often became protective charms, carrying intention into daily life, placed around doorways, tied to window latches, or looped on small household objects. They acted as tangible reminders of care, attention, and human connection. Children learned that even simple actions could carry significance. A knot tied carefully, a braid completed slowly, a strand aligned with care. Adults reflected on how these quiet markers embodied cultural memory, linking current actions to ancestral practice. The tactile continuity reinforced values of mindfulness, patience, and deliberate attention. Throughout festival days, threads were integrated into other quiet rituals. They accompanied flower crowns, decorated small altars, or were placed alongside painted eggs, herbs, or candles. The combination of sensory experiences, color, texture, scent, and light created a meditative environment in which children and adults alike moved deliberately, observed carefully, and participated attentively. Threads, subtle in form but significant in meaning, harmonized with the broader rhythm of communal practice, enhancing awareness of both individual and collective presence. Children, in particular, learned lessons beyond technique. Watching threads accumulate into patterns or garlands, they observed cause and effect, the importance of small contributions, and the interplay of effort and outcome. Each movement was measured, too fast, and strands would tangle, too loose, and knots might slip. Through repetition, observation, and careful guidance, children developed coordination, attention, and patience. These skills were not only practical, but deeply embedded with cultural significance, creating a foundation for understanding, continuity, connection, and care. Evening brought another phase of interaction with threads. A soft lantern light illuminated courtyards and interior spaces. The colors and textures of braided strands changed, shadows lengthened, highlighting the gentle contours of knots and twists. Children observed the interplay of light on surfaces, while adults reflected on patterns and arrangements. Threads left on windowsills, doorways, or garden arches caught the flicker of lamps or moonlight, creating a quiet, meditative visual rhythm. The physical environment and the crafted threads interacted, forming a sensory dialogue that encouraged slow observation and deep attentiveness. Threads also provided a form of intergenerational storytelling. Elders explained subtle variations in patterns, connecting current techniques with stories of past festivals. Children learned about small innovations introduced by families over generations, new color combinations, alternative techniques, or integration of local plant dyes. These lessons were conveyed not through formal instruction, but through observation, gentle guidance, and hands-on participation. In this way, threads functioned as living history, embodying cumulative knowledge, cultural memory, and the quiet transmission of values. The communal aspect of thread work fostered social cohesion. Families and neighbors shared materials, exchanged advice, or collaborated on longer braids and garlands. Children learned the rhythm of cooperation, waiting their turn, observing others' techniques, and contributing thoughtfully. Adults appreciated the quiet solidarity, seeing in threads a symbol of interconnectedness and shared responsibility. Even small errors were treated gently. Untangling, rebraiding, and adjusting became exercises in patience, empathy, and practical problem-solving. As night approached, threads took on additional symbolic weight. Placed around sleeping spaces, windows, or doorways, They were thought to protect inhabitants or bring gentle blessings. Children took particular pride in their contributions, observing how a simple knot or braid could enhance a shared arrangement. Adults reflected on the continuity of practice, considering how small, deliberate gestures carried meaning across generations. Threads served as both tangible and symbolic markers of care, linking personal action with collective well-being. The sensory environment remained immersive throughout. The subtle texture of fibers, faint plant-based aromas, and occasional aroma of beeswax or boiled herbs created layered, calming experiences. Movement was slow, deliberate, and mindful. Conversations were soft, punctuated by observation and tactile engagement. Shadows shifted with lantern light, and the soundscape footsteps, distant animals, quiet speech was absorbed into the rhythm of careful hands. Threads, though simple in material, mediated complex interactions of sensory attention, skill, and cultural continuity. Children went to bed with images of interwoven strands, faint colors, and gentle movements in their minds. Adults reflected on the day's practice, observing the subtle effects of combined efforts in doorways, gardens, and communal spaces. The threads remained as quiet reminders of patience, attentiveness, and continuity, extending the festival's rhythm into daily life. Over time, these small gestures accumulated into a living record of communal care and intergenerational connection. Even as threads faded or frayed, the values they embodied persisted. New strands were added each season, maintaining continuity of form, color, and symbolism. Children learned to respect impermanence while appreciating the act of care. Adults observed how even modest contributions created meaningful outcomes. The quiet, deliberate work of threads became an enduring element of festival life, teaching mindfulness, attentiveness, and gentle social connection without need for spectacle or urgency. In the end, softly spun threads were more than merit. They were instruments of meditation, markers of connection, and tangible expressions of humanity. Each knot, braid, and placement carried subtle meaning, reinforcing values of patience, attention, and continuity. Children learned to move carefully, observe attentively, and participate in shared cultural rhythms. Adults found solace in deliberate practice, reflection, and the cumulative presence of small, gentle gestures. Across generations, threads connected past, present, and future, creating a quiet, meditative, and enduring tapestry of communal life. By nightfall, threads remained as silent witnesses to the day's careful work. Moonlight, lantern glow, and shadowed walls interacted with braids and knots, enhancing textures and colors. Children drifted to sleep with mental images of intertwined fibers, calm motions, and soft learning. Adults observed lingering strands, noting patterns, colors, and placements. The practice embodied a slow, deliberate rhythm that nurtured patience, attentiveness, and communal care, quietly teaching through doing, observing, and reflecting. Thus, through the weaving and braiding of threads, villagers maintained a gentle, tactile dialogue with history, environment, and community. Every movement was measured, deliberate, and reflective, forming accurate rhythm that connected individuals across homes, streets, and generations. In these small, seemingly simple, the essence of mindfulness, patience, and human connection was preserved, offering a meditative, enduring element of festival life that shaped both young and old, body and mind, for centuries. Morning light slipped softly across the cobblestones of the village, catching on the surfaces of small fountain sand, channels carefully integrated into courtyards and streets. The air was cool and fragrant with damp earth, and the faint aroma of nearby gardens. Birds called gently in the eaves of houses, while the distant murmur of streams and rivulets added a soothing rhythm to the day. On festival mornings, one of the quietest yet most enduring customs involved water, its flow, its touch, and its gentle presence in communal life. Unlike louder displays of celebration, these water rituals were subtle, participatory, and deeply intertwined with mindfulness, observation, and simple attentiveness to the world. Villagers began the day by walking slowly to fountains or canals, carrying small containers, ladles, or pitchers. Children trailed behind elders, mimicking motions, occasionally letting drops of water fall playfully onto cobblestones or grass. Adults moved with careful precision, dipping hands or scooping small amounts to sprinkle near thresholds or along paths. Each gesture was deliberate and unhurried, reinforcing an awareness of presence and action. The sound of water softly splashing, trickling, or flowing over stone was integral to the sensory experience. Its gentle cadence blended with wind in trees and distant village life, creating a calming, layered atmosphere. These small rituals often took place in shared spaces, village squares, courtyards, or along channels designed to divert water from Stream Sinto, the heart of communal areas. Stone basins, carved with care, held clear, cool water, reflecting morning light and soft shadows of buildings and passers-by. Some channels guided water through gardens, where droplets nourished plants and gently shifted fallen petals. Children observed closely how streams curved around stones or slipped through small grooves, learning to anticipate the flow and avoid splashes while contributing small gestures of care. The tactile experience of water was central to the ritual. Fingers traced its surface, allowing droplets to run over the skin. The coolness of early morning water against hands or feet offered immediate satisfaction and a gentle grounding of attention. Children learned patience through repetition, practicing careful pouring, dipping, and sprinkling, while adults appreciated the meditative rhythm of these motions. Each interaction, no matter how brief, became an opportunity to pause, observe, and connect with the natural rhythm of water and life. Many water rituals involve symbolic placement. Small splashes on thresholds were Beliaveto, invite fortune, cleanse negativity, or bless households. Simple dips of hands in communal basins marked readiness to participate in festival activities or entry into sacred spaces. Some villages let water trickle over small stones or flower petals, creating fleeting, delicate arrangements that caught sunlight or lantern light later in the day. These ephemeral installations reminded participants of impermanence, seasonal change, and the delicate balance of effort and observation. During festival afternoons, the use of water expanded gently to include playfully yet quiet activities. Children might roll small, smooth stones along shallow channels, observing how droplets swirled around them. Adults moved among these streams, occasionally adjusting stones, realigning channels, or ensuring that flow was smooth. This collaboration fostered a shared sense of responsibility and awareness, linking young and old in the maintenance of both practical and aesthetic aspects of water features. Even laughter and conversation were subdued, harmonizing with the gentle soundscape of flowing water, rustling leaves, and quiet steps. The physical environment contributed to the experience. Stone basins were often cool and smooth beneath hands, reflecting soft morning light. Channels ran along moss-lined pathways or garden edges, their subtle curves encouraging measured movements. Small wooden or clay spouts guided water carefully, slowing its descent and enhancing its tactile and auditory qualities. Observers learned to appreciate these nuances, how a single drop could ripple across a basin, how flowing water caught light differently at various angles, and how minor adjustments influenced overall patterns. Water rituals also carried communal meaning. Elders instructed children on proper techniques, emphasizing attentiveness, respect, and care. Participation reinforced social bonds, as individuals moved in harmony, adjusted channels together, or shared water for small household needs. Even casual passers-by were drawn to participate quietly, dipping hands, watching flow, or leaving small offerings in water basins. The collective presence created a subtle, shared rhythm, where each person's action harmonized with others, fostering calm and quiet connection. Observing the interplay of water and daily life offered another layer of meditation. Early sunlight glimmered on surfaces, highlighting droplets and gentle ripples. Children learned patience as they waited for basins to refill, water to reach distant corners, or channels to settle after adjustment. Adults reflected on the continuity of practice, how small, deliberate actions repeated over years created lasting patterns and subtle beauty. Water became both a practical tool and a medium for reflection, offering sensory engagement, ritual significance, and aesthetic pleasure simultaneously. Throughout the day, water rituals intertwined with other festival customs. Small floral arrangements might be floated along channels, releasing petals gently into slow-moving streams. Lanterns sometimes rested near basins, casting soft flickering reflection. Threads or braided cords might be dipped lightly, transferring water's flow into symbolic continuity. Each interaction reinforced the overall rhythm of festival life. Measured, attentive.com, and interconnected. Sensory elements, sight, sound, touch, and occasionally scent worked together to create a fully immersive, quietly meditative environment. Evening introduced new opportunities for interaction. As lanterns were lit and shadows lengthened, reflections in fountains, basins, and channels became more pronounced. The play of light and water created a soft visual poetry, encouraging gentle observation and slow movement. Children continueto practice careful dips and pours, their small gestures enhanced by shimmering reflections. Adults adjusted minor elements, guiding flow or repositioning small objects to maintain order and continuity. The soft interplay of human, motion and natural element formed an intimate, living tapestry of practice and observation. The ritual also cultivated attentiveness to impermanence and change. Water, inherently transient, shifted with each movement, evaporation, or rainfall. Participants learned that their efforts, while deliberate, were part of a larger natural rhythm, and that mindfulness required flexibility and gentle adaptation. Children and adults alike observed how a small change in angle or pressure altered flow, teaching patience, reflection, and respect for both process and result. This awareness extended beyond immediate interaction, influencing broader behaviors and attitudes in daily life. By late evening, water rituals became increasingly contemplative. Basins settled into stillness, channels slowed, and reflections deepened in quiet light. Footsteps softened as villagers moved toward homes or communal hearths. Children, tired but attentive, observed the last ripples, noting the interplay of light, shadow, and water. Adults reflected on cumulative actions, how small, deliberate gestures had shaped both environment and experience. The day's gentle rhythm, punctuated by flowing water, carried a sense of completeness, serenity, and connection to both nature and community. Water's role in festival life extended beyond physical ritual to psychological and emotional domains. The tactile sensation of coolness against skin, the repetitive motions of pouring and splashing, and the soft auditory landscape all fostered relaxation, attentiveness, and calm. Participation cultivated mindfulness and slow awareness, allowing villagers to inhabit each moment fully. Even brief interactions, dipping a hand, watching droplets glimmer, or adjusting a smile can all afford quiet satisfaction and grounded attention. These experiences created lasting impressions, linking memory, habit, and seasonal rhythm in gentle harmony. Throughout the village, water's presence served as a living connector. Children observed elders, learning not only technique but also patience and attentiveness. Adults appreciated minor details, reflecting on how centuries of quiet practice had shaped communal understanding, aesthetics, and social rhythm. Even the smallest gestures, a flick of water on a doorstep, a carefully placed stream in a garden, a single splash over a stone carried layered meaning, merging practicality, ritual significance, and sensory delight. The gentle, continuous presence of water became a quiet teacher, guiding attention, reflection, and movement in a soft, unhurried cadence. As night deepened, fountains and channels rested in stillness. Moonlight glimmered faintly on water surfaces, while lanterns cast gentle pools of light, acrostone and cobblestone. The day's cumulative actions left traces, small ripples frozen in basins, petals carried along channels, and reflections shimmering faintly. Children drifted to sleep with tactile, visual, and auditory impressions of water, sensing its cool, flowing presence. Adults retired with a deepened awareness of continuity, mindfulness, and the subtle rhythms connecting community, environment, and tradition. The gentle rituals of water persisted across seasons, rain, frost, or sun-altered conditions, requiring minor adaptation, observation, and adjustment. Yet the core principles remained: mindfulness, careful attention, and deliberate participation. Villagers learned to integrate these quiet gestures into daily and festival life, finding calm, continuity, and sensory grounding through interaction with water. Children grew familiar with the rhythm, adults maintained continuity, and each year renewed the practice gently, silently, and persistently. Through these small deliberate actions, water became a living, flowing element of memory, community, and reflection. Its presence, subtle and continuous, shaped sensory experience, social cohesion, and intergenerational continuity. Each drop, splash, and ripple carried lessons of patience, mindfulness, and gentle attentiveness. Water's quiet role in medieval festivals, though easily overlooked by the unobservant eye, offered profound, lasting influence, embedding calm, ritual, and sensory awareness into daily life and communal identity. By the final hours of night, basins reflected moon and shadow, channels whispered over stones, and courtyards rested in quiet stillness. Water, having moved through hands, gardens, and channels, remained as a subtle, persistent reminder of care, mindfulness, and its soft presence linked past, present, and future participants, creating an enduring rhythm of observation, reflection, and serene engagement. The gentle water rituals exemplified the unhurried, contemplative qualities of festival life, leaving a lasting, quiet imprint on both environment and consciousness. As morning light unfolded across the village, gentle rays illuminated small displays of grains, fruits, and nuts that had been carefully placed in doorways, near shrines, and along public squares. The air was cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and morning dew, mingling with the lingering sweetness of fruit and the subtle aroma of harvested grains. Villagers moved slowly among these modest offerings, observing, arranging, and miscantrating new items. The act of leaving harvest tokens was quiet, unobtrusive, and deeply embedded in communal life. Unlike grand ceremonies or elaborate festivals, this ritual was soft and personal, blending seamlessly into daily routines while subtly reinforcing the rhythm of community. Gratitude and attentiveness, Tuthland's generosity. Children, small hands, sticky from berries, or lightly dusted with flour from ground grains, often played with the tokens, arranging them in patterns on flat stones or along paths. These playful acts were met with gentle guidance from elders, who encouraged mindfulness and subtle order without discouraging. Small heaps of wheat, barley, or oats were aligned in neat rows, sometimes forming spirals or geometric shapes. A few scattered nuts or dried fruits might be incorporated, adding color and texture. Every placement carried a sense of care and attention, as though the act itself could imbue the token with energy, warmth, and meaning. Elders observed patiently, their eyes tracing patterns created over years of repetition. Each token, though small and fragile, represented a larger cycle, the planting, tending, and harvesting of crops, the continuity of the seasons, and the labor and care of generations. In some households, families quietly whispered brief stories, linking the day's small actions with ancestral memory. A child placing a single hazelnut near a doorway might hear about a great harvest from decades before, or the story of a grandmother who had guided suck arrangements during her youth. These soft narratives connected the physical, sensory act of leaving a token with the invisible thread of history, creating an intimate, layered experience for participants. Tokens were not only symbolic, but practical reminders of abundance and careful stewardship. Villagers recognized the cyclical nature of sustenance, understanding that food was both ephemeral and renewing. Placing a kernel of wheat or a tony fruit on a shrine was a way of honoring continuity, acknowledging that life depended upon care, attention, and the quiet accumulation of small efforts. Children were taught to approach the offerings gently, to move slowly, and to appreciate the subtleties of shape, color, and scent. Even the tactile qualities, the roughness of sex, the smoothness of nuts, the delicate skin of berries were noticed and absorbed, creating a quiet, sensory connection between human hands and nature's gifts. In public squares, arrangements of tokens, sometimes formed subtle communal patterns. Villagers contributed small items one by one, creating a collective tapestry that emphasized shared responsibility and quiet participation. These cumulative displays were never ostentatious, yet they held meaning for those who observed and contributed. Travelers passing through might pause to notice its colors, textures, and careful placements, sensing the invisible web of communal effort that linked disparate homes, families, and generations. The ritual required no formal announcement, only gentle attention, patience, and a willingness to engage with both material and memory. The rhythm of the day was entwined with the placement and observation of harvest tokens. Morning dew would glisten on kernels and nuts, while sunlight slow warmed their surfaces. Small insects occasionally wandered among the offerings, unnoticed or gently brushed aside. Villagers adjusted items as needed, correcting small displacements caused by wind or wandering. These minor interventions were carried out with soft, deliberate care, emphasizing attentiveness and the practice of mindfulness in movement. Even the simple act of walking along a row of tokens became a meditative passage, a chance to slow down and appreciate textures, colors, and patterns created by human and natural hand-sleight. Families incorporated tokens into household routines. A small dish of nuts might sit on a windowsill for a morning blessing, while a handful of berries was placed near the hearth to honor the household's connection to earth. Such acts were private yet permeated communal consciousness, contributing to the festival's general atmosphere. Children observed quietly, learning that giving and acknowledging abundance could be small, everyday gestures rather than grand performances. Parents demonstrated care in handling fragile seeds or fruits, showing that intention and precision mattered as much as the material act itself. The sensory qualities of tokens were amplified during the day. Sunlight warmed the surfaces of grains and nuts, highlighting their varied color sand textures. The smell of dry grains mingled with earth, herbs, and lingering sense of cooking fires. Even the gentle rustle of leaves or the soft patter of a breeze against arranged petals and fruits contributed to the observers were immersed not only in visual aesthetics but also in subtle auditory and each sense reinforced the calm, meditative quality of the ritual, allowing participants to experience their present moment fully. Seasonal awareness was central to the practice. Tokens reflected the current harvest, but also hinted at cycles to come. A few early apples suggested upcoming autumn abundance, while grains harvested in previous months were included to honor continuity and preparedness. Villagers recognized that these small, quiet acts tied their daily lives to larger temporal rhythms. Children were taught to note the passage of time through subtle changes in the tokens, observing the way sunlight faded colors or humidity softened textures. Elders highlighted these changes as lessons in patience, resilience, and attentiveness to cycles beyond immediate. Evening brought additional reflection. As the sun dipped, shadows lengthened over arranged tokens. Light shifted slowly across the square, catching grains, fruits, and nuts in fleeting glimmers. Villagers paused to adjust small placements, quietly remarking on arrangements or patterns they found pleasing. The day's labor, though minor in scale, carried an enduring sense of fulfillment. Children lingered near their small creations, observing insects or subtle movements caused by wind, learning that even impermanent gestures could be meaningful and meditative. Stories often accompanied the ritual. Elders whispered tales of ancestors who had performed similar acts, of harvests past, of festivals that had long since faded. These narratives were not dramatic or overwhelming, but gentle reminders of continuity. By linking the physical act of token placement to oral memory, villagers reinforced social bonds, transmitted knowledge, and created layers of reflection accessible to all ages. Each kernel or fruit became a quiet vessel of meaning, carrying both material and immaterial significance. By nightfall, many tokens had been moved, adjusted, or interacted with multiple times. Their presence remained, a subtle imprint of the day's shared attention. Children, tired but observant, noticed their play of moonlight across nuts, grains, and scattered fruits. Adults reflected on the simple, enduring power of repeated, mindful actions. The ritual did not require speeches, grand gestures, or spectacle. Its strength lay in the accumulation of quiet attentions, small placements, and the layered interaction of individuals across time and space. The repetition of these acts across years reinforced continuity. Villagers who had participated as children returned as adults, guiding younger generations. Even subtle changes in types of grains, fruits, or arrangements were incorporated thoughtfully, maintaining the spirit of mindfulness while acknowledging novelty. The practice was resilient, able to adapt gently to minor disruptions, yet consistently cultivated awareness, community cohesion, and quiet appreciation of natural abundance. By the end of the day, the harvest tokens remained as a silent, gentle testimony to human care, attentiveness, and generosity. They marked cycles of abundance, reflected seasonal rhythms, and connected individuals with community, nature, and ancestry. Children fell asleep thinking of soft colors and textures, while adults carried forward a calm sense of continuity and shared purpose. Even those who passed by quietly noted the presence of carefully placed grains and fruits, recognizing the invisible web of human attention and care that extended across houses, streets, and generations. In this slow, layered manner, the humble harvest token ritual persisted across decades and centuries. Its significance was less in spectacle than in quiet repetition, attentiveness, and the cultivation of a meditative, communal rhythm. It taught patience, observation, and respect for both material and immaterial worlds. By participating, villagers absorbed subtle lessons in generosity, continuity, and mindfulness. Even the smallest gestures, single grain, a tiny nut, a lone berry, served as anchors of presence, creating lasting impressions in hands, eyes, and memory. The tactile, sensory, and communal dimensions of the ritual offered deep, quiet fulfillment. Fingers traced rough grains, smooth nuts, and delicate skins. Eyes followed colors, patterns, and subtle arrangements. Ears noticed quiet shifts caused by wind, footsteps, or small insects. The ritual's power lay in these intersections of perception, reflection, and participation, each reinforcing attentiveness and awareness of the surrounding world. Children and adults alike internalized these lessons, carrying them forward into daily life, even when festivals ended or seasons shifted. As night deepened and villagers returned to hearths, the tokens remained quiet and unassuming. Moonlight highlighted subtle textures and colors, shadows lengthened, and the gentle presence of the day's small labors lingered. The harvest tokens became markers of continuity, sensory meditation, and communal attention. They reflected the enduring, calm pulse of village life and the soft, patient hands that nurtured both land and community across generations. Even as the festival concluded and streets emptied, the presence of harvest tokens quietly reinforced the values of mindfulness, care, and gratitude. They offered a moment of pause, a slow acknowledgement of abundance, and a gentle invitation to consider the interwoven nature of human effort, seasonal change, and communal rhythm. Through these modest gestures, villagers engaged in a centuries-long dialogue with history, environment, and each other, preserving continuity and serenity through simple, deliberate acts of care. As the sun began its slow descent, casting amber and rose hues across the village, the air grew cooler and the soft rustle of leaves filled the quiet streets. Lanterns were lit one by one, their flickering light reflected in small puddles, on cobblestones, and along timbered walls. Shadows lengthened naturally, stretching across doorways, fences, and narrow alleyways, offering the perfect canvas for the evening's gentle entertainment. Villagers, already accustomed to the calm rhythms of daily life and the subtleties of festival preparation, began to gather slowly near walls and open squares. The gathering was People arrived at their own pace, some lingering to watch insects flit over flower petals, others pausing to adjust the placement of a lantern. The soft glow enhancing both scene and imagination. The performers moved with care, manipulating small figures behind screens or against illuminated walls. Their movements were deliberate and soft, designed not to startle, but to encourage contemplation and wonder. Wooden puppets, thinly stretched cloth, and delicate paper figures danced gently in the light, casting elongated silhouettes that shifted with the flicker of lantern flames. Even their smallest gestures, a slight tilt of a figure's head, a measured step, were imbued with meaning, demonstrating the patient skill of artisans who had learned their craft over many quiet years. These shadow plays were not designed to overwhelm. They were subtle performances, emphasizing the slow, layered beauty of storytelling rather than spectacle. Audiences settled into the soft rhythm of the evening. Children crouched near the front, leaning forward with curiosity, eyes wide as silhouettes moved across surfaces. Some traced shapes with fingers, delighting in the way tiny shadows grew and shrank as hands or puppets shifted. Adults observed more meditatively, absorbing narrative flow, while allowing attention to drift to the gentle surrounding sounds. Wind, in the trees, the rustle of leaves, the occasional low call of a nightbird. Each observer participated quietly, contributing to a collective calmness. Conversation was minimal, whispers rare, and laughter subdued, punctuating the evening only as a gentle acknowledgement of delight, rather than urgency or excitement. Stories performed through shadow were often familiar, drawn from local legend, moral tales, or simple parables of daily life. Yet even repeated narratives maintained freshness because the medium emphasized impermanence. Each flickering light transformed characters into ephemeral beings, appearing momentarily before dissolving back into darkness. Villagers watched, not out of expectation, but out of attentive presence, aware that the performance existed only in the delicate interplay of light and shadow. The ephemeral quality of shadows mirrored the cycles of life, seasons, and festival days, reinforcing the transient beauty of human experience and communal memory. Preparations for the shadow plays were quiet, deliberate, and embedded in daily life. Smaller turns were arranged along walls and between audience members. Their warm glow set low to prevent glare and maintain soft illumination. Screens, often crafted from stretched cloth or carefully joined wooden frames, were positioned thoughtfully, ensuring that each puppet or figure's motion would translate into subtle, precise shadow. The performers themselves dressed in muted, simple garments, moving gracefully without drawing attention to themselves outside the rhythm of the narrative. Even the puppets were lightly scented with lavender or dried herbs in some households, adding a faint olfactory layer to the visual display, which mingled with the cool evening air and the soft scent of evening blooms. Children were often apprenticed to the craft of shadow play. They learned by observation first, tracing movements, noting the effect of distance between puppet and screen, and recognizing how light could alter perception. Then, under gentle guidance, they began to practice small gestures, shifting a figure's hand, adjusting a lantern, or moving a screen slightly to alter the scene. Mistakes were treated as quiet learning opportunities. Each misstep offered insight into light, shadow, and rhythm. In this patient way, the craft passed from generation to generation, not as a rigid obligation, but as a gentle engagement with community, narrative, and artistry. Families often participated collectively, setting up spaces together while preparing small offerings of seasonal fruits, nuts, or flower petals. These tokens, placid nearby, subtly reflected gratitude for the harvest, the artistry of the performers, or the safety and prosperity of they. Even simple gestures, adjusting a lantern, placing a few leaves in a decorative pattern, were treated as part of the overall performance, blending household care with public spectacle. Through this integration, shadow plays became not merely entertainment, but a holistic, quiet expression of community life, mindfulness, and shared aesthetics. The sensory environment contributed to the calming atmosphere. Lantern flames flicker gently, casting warm, golden hues across walls, windows, and paving stones. Shadows danced lightly, some atoms overlapping or stretching unexpectedly, creating a sense of impermanent beauty that drew viewers' attention without urgency. A soft breeze occasionally shifted the screens or lanterns, altering the shapes and giving each performance a small, unpredictable element, reminding participants of the subtle ways nature interacted with human intention. The ambient sounds of evening rustling leaves, distant animal calls, and the gentle murmurs of fellow villagers wove seamlessly into the experience, creating a multi-sensory tapestry of calm observation. The narratives themselves often conveyed gentle moral lessons, civic memory, or seasonal reflection. Stories of harvest, domestic care, quiet heroism, or reverence for ancestors encouraged mindful contemplation rather than dramatic excitement. Shadows allowed viewers to see beyond literal forms. Animals might morph into humans, ordinary objects transformed into symbolic figures, and simple gestures were imbued with layers of meaning. Observers were invited to reflect internally rather than react externally, connecting story content with personal experience, past events, and communal tradition. As twilight deepened, performances often slowed. Figures moved with increasing deliberation, pauses lengthened, and transitions became subtle. Villagers, now fully immersed in the sensory and narrative environment, absorbed these slower cadences naturally. Even children, whose initial excitement had been visible, began to move less, tilting heads gently or allowing eyes to wander across shapes in contemplative observation. The shared patience of the audience, performers, and environment inferred calm awareness and attentive presence. After the formal narratives concluded, performers often lingered briefly, moving figures slowly across the screens, allowing shadows to drift freely with lantern flicker. This unstructured time permitted viewers to enjoy improvisation, to imagine their own stories, or to notice minute details, the gentle sway of a puppet's hand, the soft bend of a screen in the breeze, or the interplay between multiple lanterns casting overlapping silhouettes. These small improvisations emphasize implements, observation, and the meditative quality of the festival, reinforcing quiet reflection as an essential component of communal experience. Over the course of the evening, shadow plays facilitated social cohesion. Families observed together, friends discussed subtle patterns softly, and neighbors shared quiet reflections about technique, story, or symbolism. No commentary was necessary. The act of witnessing itself was participation. The ritual encouraged mindfulness, gentle attentiveness, and a collective appreciation of transient beauty, allowing individuals to connect not only with one another, but with time, memory, and the slow unfolding of the festival day. As the lanterns dimmed toward the later hours, the last shadows merged with darkness. Screens were folded and stored carefully, lanterns extinguished one by one, leaving traces of soft smoke and a lingering warmth from flickering flames. Villagers departed slowly, moving through quiet streets while observing the subtle residual glow of lantern light on windowsills and walls. Children, now tired, walked hand in hand with fielders, occasionally looking back at faint impressions of shadow forms still etched into memory. Even these simplest gestures, the gentle handling of a puppet, the careful placement of a lantern, the soft pattern of a shadow were remembered and internalized, forming quiet layers of cultural continuity. The cumulative effect of shadow plays over years, decades, and generations was profound. Each performance, while ephemeral in nature, contributed to an enduring framework of aesthetic appreciation, moral reflection, and communal. Children who learned as apprentices carried their skills forward. Elders transmitted story, ritual, and attention to detail, and the village maintained a collective rhythm in which art, memory, and daily life were in this way, shadow plays were not merely entertainment. They were a living practice of attentiveness, patience, and quiet artistry that persisted alongside the cycles of seasons, harvests, and festival days. Even as villagers retired for the night, the mental images of shadow forms remained. Silhouettes, often enamels, figures, and symbolic shapes floated softly in memory, offering calm visualizations that lingered into sleep. The interplay of light and darkness, movement and stillness, story and observation provided a slow, meditative rhythm that eased minds and hearts. In this way, shadow plays transcended performance, becoming a gentle instrument of emotional and cognitive reflection, perfectly aligned with the quiet objectives of medieval festivals: connection, attentiveness, and subtle celebration of life's ephemeral beauty. Through centuries, the tradition endured. Even as lantern materials evolved, stories shifted slightly, and techniques were refined. The underlying calm, meditative, and communal qualities remained intact. Each generation contributed, observed, and internalized, ensuring that the gentle art of shadow play continued to offer a unique combination of narrative, visual subtlety, and meditative presence. Villagers and visitors alike appreciated the delicate interplay of light and form, sensing that such small, slow performances were capable of connecting them to place, time, and one another in meaningful, enduring ways. By the end of the evening, the streets were quiet once again. Thea held a faint warmth from lanterns, carrying soft residual scents of herbs, incense, and fire. Shadows, having performed their temporary narratives, dissolved into night. The village settled, each household absorbing the soft energy of the evening into hearth, home, and heart. In these quiet, cumulative ways, shadow plays at twilight exemplified the slow, gentle, and attentive nature of medieval festival traditions, ephemeral, subtle, deeply immersive, and endlessly meditative. As the sun slowly sank below the distant hills, casting long, soft shadows across cobblestone streets and thatched rooftops, the village began its gentle transition from the warmth and bustle of festival activity to the calm of lanterns, carefully arranged along narrow lanes, open squares, and doorways, flickered with tender light, casting muted golden reflections on stone, timber, and water. Their glow traced the edges of carts, market stalls, and flower displays, reminding observers of the careful preparations that had gone into each quiet. In the air hung the subtle scent of herbs, baked bread, and lingering incense, forming a delicate perfume that was at once familiar and comforting. Even the faint rustle of leaves in the evening breeze contributed to a tranquil sensory tapestry, blending naturally with distant murmurs of villagers concluding their day's work. Soft bells, suspended from wooden frames at the tops of small churches and shrines, rang slowly in measured tones. Unlike the urgency of alarm or the grandeur of midday celebrations, these bells marked the passing of time with calm authority, announcing the festival's end while inviting reflection. Villagers paused as sound reached them, whether near home, along quiet pathways, or resting by fountains and gardens. Their steps slowed, heads tilted toward the lingering resonance, a sound that seemed to fold the day into memory. Children listened attentively, some standing still with small hands pressed together, while adults inhaled deeply, letting the vibration of the bell travel through their chest and shoulders. In these few moments, the village collectively acknowledged the subtle rhythm of both ritual and natural time, attuning themselves to the cadence of evening and nightfall. Market stalls, which had been brimming with fruit, simple toys, ribbons, and small handcrafted items, were now folded and packed away. Cloth coverings were drawn over wooden tables, baskets inverted carefully to protect remaining goods, and small coins and offerings left in quiet corners were collected and stored. Even these simple acts were performed with patience, almost ceremonially, as though the care taken in clearing the day's festival mirrored the reverence with which the festival itself had been observed. Children, sometimes reluctantly, followed elders, learning not only the practical steps of cleanup, but also the lesson of mindfulness inherent in slow, deliberate actions. The village's rhythm did not end abruptly. Rather, it tapped regently, encouraging a sense of ease and completeness. Along the winding lanes, families walked quietly toward their homes, the scent of evening fires drifting from hearths blended softly with the lingering aroma of festival herbs. Bundles of lavender, sage, or thyme emitted faint, calming fragrances, having been waved through the air during the day to honor tradition or carry good fortune. As these aromas mingled with the cooler air of approaching night, they created a natural lull, inviting slow breathing and reflection. Villagers often inhaled deliberately, savoring the gentle tapestry of scents, the quiet motion of smoke rising from chimneys, and the soft, uneven light of lanterns glowing in the darkening streets. Even those who had wandered the village in hurried curiosity during the day now moved in unhurried steps, blending with the environment, absorbing this and allowing the festival's energy to settle gently into memory. Children yawned softly as they walked beside their parents, heads leaning against shoulders or holding hands tightly. Their earlier excitement, the games, the music, the weaving of threads and flowers had gradually mellowed into calm attentiveness. Some carried small tokens collected from the day, a painted egg, a bundle of petals, a carefully tied thread. Others clutched hands of elders who spoke quietly of past festivals, recounting memories of similar nights long ago. In these exchanges, children absorbed both content and cadence, the slow storytelling, the careful selection of words, the deliberate manner in which traditions were discussed, all reinforcing a gentle sense of time, continuity, and observation. The combination of narrative and environment invited them into a quiet understanding of cultural rhythm, patience, and presence. Alongside human activity, the natural world contributed its part in welcoming nightfall. Birds had retreated to trees, settling among branches with occasional soft calls. Frogs croaked gently near streams and fountains, harmonizing with the faint ripple of water trickling through channels that ran along streets and courtyards. Even wind moved differently at this hour, softening its pace, caressing leaves and grass, and carrying whispers of the day's small activities into distant corners of the interplay of these gentle natural sounds with the diminishing human activity created a layered, immersive atmosphere. Villagers, consciously or unconsciously, tuned themselves to this ambient rhythm, allowing sensory perception to slow, to align with the ebb of the festival, and to anticipate night's quiet embrace. Lanterns were gradually extinguished one by one. Some were carried inside homes, their last flame illuminating polished wood floors, simple hearths, or flower-adorned windowsills. Others remained outdoors briefly, casting a final glow over courtyards and pathways, until careful hands removed them, leaving a faint trace of smoke. And the fading of light marked more than a practical end to illumination. It symbolized the gentle transition from communal celebration to personal reflection, from active participation to introspection. Observers noted these subtle changes in shadow and perception, the softening of colors, and the deepening of night's blue hue. Each of these transitions contributed to an overarching sense of calm, continuity, and safety, reinforcing the reflective qualities of the festival experience. Elders often paused at thresholds, taking slow breaths and observing the village's gentle descent into night. Some recited quiet prayers or blessings, others folded hands in thoughtful contemplation. These gestures were simple yet deeply resonant, echoing centuries of tradition that had survived through quiet consistency rather than spectacle. Their presence, combined with attentive observation of children and neighbors, reinforced a subtle, communal understanding of festival etiquette, respect for space, time, and shared ritual. Even minor details, a softly adjusted candle, a tucked-away bundle of herbs, a carefully replaced flower crown reflected values of attentiveness, patience, and care for both human and environment. The sound of the last bell faded into memory, leaving a gentle echo that mingled with distant frogs and the whisper of wind. Streets emptied slowly. Some villagers lingered briefly at doorsteps or windows, absorbing residual light and warmth. Others followed familiar paths to smaller courtyards, quiet wells, or garden nooks, pausing to note the faint patterns of petals or arrangements of festival tokens. The day's odd traditions, the soft scattering of petals, the weaving of threads, the careful placement of painted eggs, and the subtle play of shadow had now become imprinted in collective consciousness. These small, mindful acts accumulated into layers of continuity and cultural memory, quietly sustaining the village's sense of identity and shared history. Even as night deepened and stars began to pierce the sky with cool pinpoints of light, the village retained its gentle energy. Lamps that had illuminated alleyways and courtyards were gone, leaving only moonlight, starlight, and the faint glow of residual embers in hearths. The combination of darkness, scattered illumination, and quiet human presence created a sensory space conducive to calm contemplation. Adults inhaled deeply, children yawned, and the village collectively attuned itself to the rhythm of rest, sleep, and reflection. The festivals, odditized the gentle, strange, or whimsical traditions, had subtly reinforced a mindset of presence, attentiveness, and calm, demonstrating that even small, unusual gestures could nurture mindfulness. As households settled, the scent of firewood, herbs, and lingering incense filled interiors. Familiars had quiet conversation or simply sat together, letting eyes trace the dim shapes of rooms, windows, and furniture. Children, lulled by gentle lighting, soft voices, and remembered festival imagery, drifted into sleep with visions of shadow plays, lanterns, and scattered petals. Adults reflected, sometimes silently, on the day, noting both the peculiar and the soothing, the painted eggs, the woven threads, the aroma of herbs, and the slow, deliberate motions of the festival's rituals. These reflections created a sense of closure, reinforcing abundance, continuity, and subtle joy. Finally, the village itself seemed to breathe with evening's rhythm. Streets were empty, courtyards still, and fountains whispered softly in the distance. Each home radiated faint warmth from hearths or residual candlelight, sustaining calm. Above, the sky darkened fully, stars glimmered steadily, and the quiet hum of night mingled with memories of human gestures, subtle traditions, and the festival, once lively with communal participation, now existed as memory, reflection, and gentle sensory residue. In this quietude, the village rested, carrying forward both continuity and curiosity for future The festival's odd traditions, observed with care, patience, and mindfulness, had achieved a delicate balance, bridging generations, blending human activity with natural rhythm, and cultivating calm presence. Each small ritual, the scattering of petals, the placement of coins, the weaving of threads, the flicker of lanterns, or the chime of bells was integrated into communal experience, reinforcing attention, empathy, and the subtle joy of shared practice. Even without spectacle or urgency, these gentle acts created lasting impressions, embedding values of patience, respect, and care into both consciousness and landscape. By the time the village fully sank into night, a quiet satisfaction lingered. Elders rested, children slept, and the last embers in hearths emitted gentle warmth. Outdoor spaces were calm, streets silent, and the air perfumed faintly by herbs, flowers, and the memory of human activity. In these final hours, villagers absorbed the festival's quiet lessons that care, attention, and gentle rituals could be as meaningful as grand gestures, that even the oddest, most whimsical customs had the power to unify, teach, and soothe, and that mindfulness, reflection, and presence were cultivated through repeated, deliberate, and shared experience. The closing of festival day, marked by soft bells and the tiling of night, encapsulated centuries of tradition, carrying both human and natural rhythm into the coming days. In the stillness, the village existed not merely as a location, but as a living repository of memory, practice, and gentle guidance. Time itself seemed to slow, folding past into present and embedding continuity into thievery stones, plants, and air of the community. The festival, with all its peculiar, beautiful, and meditative qualities, had achieved its purpose: to create calm, to nurture attention, and to leave all who participated in a state of mindful serenity. As night deepened over quiet villages and the soft glow of lingering lanterns faded into darkness, the echoes of medieval festivals remained in subtle ways. These celebrations, with all their peculiar, whimsical, and gentle customs, were more than mere entertainment. They were expressions of community, patience, and continuity. Each act, the scattering of petals across stone courtyards, the careful weaving of threads, the placement of painted eggs, the lighting of candles and lanterns, was a quiet testament to the rhythm of life and the human desire to mark time with presence and care. In observing these rituals, people across generations had learned not only to participate, but to notice, to move slowly, and to honor the small, beautiful details that wove their lives together. The oddities of these festivals, seen through modern eyes, might appear trivial, eccentric, or curious, yet in their original context they offered profound comfort. Children, elders, and travelers alike could engage with the world in a deliberate, gentle manner. Coins left in quiet corners or wells taught mindfulness, encouraging attention to place and the unseen. Flower crowns, scattered petals, and soft arrangements of herbs invited sensory awareness, guiding hands, eyes, and noses to interact with the environment thoughtfully. These gestures reminded villagers that even small actions could hold meaning, that time, seasons, and effort could be acknowledged and celebrated without noise or urgency. The festivals, in their unassuming rituals, cultivated a sense of belonging, calm, and mutual respect, a shared understanding that life, even when peculiar, was worth attending to carefully. As the sun rose and fell over the years, these customs persisted, sometimes shifting slightly with new generations or neighboring influences, yet always maintaining the core of mindful participation. Lanterns along rivers or in courtyards glimmered with the same soft, patient light that guided the first celebrants centuries before. Shadows from evening performances lingered in memory, subtly shaping children's imaginations and the elders' reflections. The simple act of touching petals, placing coins, or tracing shapes on paper carried continuity across time, allowing individuals to connect with those who had come before them, feeling part of a larger, slower rhythm that stretched beyond a single day or even a single lifetime. One of the remarkable aspects of these medieval festivals was their ability to nurture quiet observation. They invited attention to texture, movement, and form. The gentle sway of branches above, the cooling stone beneath bare feet, the soft scent of herbs in evening air. All of these elements worked together to form a music, when present, was subtle, softly played pipes, handbells, or flutes that intertwined with the natural sounds of the village, birds settling in trees, water trickling through fountains, the low rustle of windthrow, cobblestones, and straw roofs. Through these experiences, participants learned a form of reflection that was slow, natural, and deeply human, encouraging patience and empathy without ever needing Moreover, these traditions demonstrated the value of rhythm and repetition in creating stability. Festivals marked seasonal changes, agricultural cycles, and communal milestones. By repeating gentle rituals each year, placing herbs, weaving threads, lighting candles, carrying lanterns, villagers reinforced a sense of time and predictability that was calming, grounding, and restorative. Even when a particular action seemed peculiar, it carried a consistency that reassured participants, connecting them to broader cycles of nature and society. In these repeated gestures, communities learned to slow their pace, to appreciate moments, and to recognize that meaning often lies in small, sustained attention rather than grand spectacle. The intergenerational lot of festival customs also fostered quiet continuity. Children learned by observing and participating as adults, discovering the subtle layers of meaning embedded in every act. Elders, in turn, found joy and solace in teaching, passing on knowledge through demonstration, gentle guidance, and patient explanation. Families, neighbors, and even travelers were woven together in shared experience, their interactions framed not by urgency or competition, but by cooperation, curiosity, and respect. Festivals became a living archive of practice, not recorded in books or monuments, but in the shared memory of hands, eyes, voices, and sense, gently enduring across decades. Even the oddities themselves, the painted eggs, shadow plays, or seemingly trivial gestures served a subtle purpose. By encouraging attentiveness to small details, they trained the mind to observe, to pause, and to find calm amid activity. These unusual elements were never intended to startle or instead, they provided gentle surprises, small delights that encouraged appreciation and reflection. In doing so, they balanced repetition with novelty, structure with play, and ritual with imagination. Participants learned that life could be both ordered and whimsical, serious and playful, all within a safe, calm, and super. As the festivals concluded and night embraced the village, participants carried the day's lessons and experiences into their homes, hearts, and minds. Children drifted to sleep with memories of soft music, flickering lanterns, drifting petals, and shadowed stories. Adults reflected quietly on the interweaving of nature, ritual, and community. Even in stillness, the lessons persisted, that mindfulness, careful attention, and small acts of care could nourish both individuals and the broader community. In this way, the festivals achieved a form of quiet immortality, their odd, gentle practices surviving through lived experience rather than recorded history. Ultimately, the enduring value of these medieval festivals lies in their invitation to slow down, to engage gently with the present, and to notice what might otherwise pass unseen. They remind us that human beings, across centuries, have always sought calm and connection, often expressing it through simple, deliberate, and sometimes peculiar actions. From coins in quiet corners to floral arrangements, from shadow plays at twilight to softly lit lanterns along rivers, every gesture served to anchor participants in the moment, cultivate mindfulness, and nurture community bonds. In these repeated and shared acts, people discovered that meaning is not always loud, that joy can be subtle, and that continuity is found in the quiet persistence of human care and attention. So, as we reflect on these gentle oddities, we may find a quiet lesson for ourselves. Just as villagers centuries ago moved slowly through ritual, attending to petals, threads, light, and sound, we too can pause, breathe, and notice the soft hum of everyday life, the subtle beauty of repeated gestures, and the care given to even small actions carry significance that echoes beyond immediate perception. In honoring these traditions, we honor the rhythms of life itself, the passage of days and seasons, the nurturing of relationships, and the cultivation of mindfulness. We are reminded that peace, presence, and calm are not found only in grand events, but in the careful, deliberate attention paid to ordinary ephemeral moments. As night continues to deepen and the village rests under starlit skies, the memory of festivals, strange, gentle, and enduring, lingers like a soft echo. Their rituals, steeped in subtle meaning and repeated care, invite us to embrace calm observation, patience, and community. In carrying these lessons forward, we acknowledge that even the oddest customs can cultivate empathy, and serenity. They teach that joy need not shout, that learning need not hurry, and that Humanka expressed quietly and consistently leaves a lasting imprint. Thus, as we let the mind rest and the imagination drift through centuries of quiet tradition, we may feel a soft connection to those who came before, the children, elders, neighbors, and travelers who participated in festivals with patience, curiosity, and their rituals, their oddities, and their attentiveness continue to whisper across time, reminding us that the smallest, calmest gestures often carry the deepest resonance. And in this whisper, we find an invitation to carry presence, mindfulness, and quiet celebration into our own lives, observing both the ordinary and the peculiar with equal care, gratitude, and serenity.